In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
For our own cause, we got a pen and telephone to bypass all the laws.
All right, folks, this is Rick Robinson with you. I want to tell you about some friends of mine from a company called Security Enforcement Specialists. When I ran my security agency for 12 years, I worked with one of these partners on a daily basis. He's been involved in this agency now, and with his other partner, they do have over 30 years of experience in the private security industry. If you own a business and you need someone to keep you or your customers or residents safe, then I highly recommend contacting Security Enforcement Specialists today. Give them a call at 405-703-1796. Again, that's 405-703-1796. Again, tell them Rick from K98 Talk sent you. Like I said, if you need the help, they are here for you. So make sure that you go look them up, check them out, and see what they can do.
The wrong way. Welcome to the place. Welcome to the
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The Internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Now get set again.
The following program contains material of an enlightening manner. Open-mindedness is advised.
Today, I want you to open your mind.
I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damn big that the mass of people can't deal with it.
We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques to get people actually to love their servitude.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
To change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people of the world, and especially the United States, to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
As you connect the dots between different people, organizations, places, religions, history, suddenly the picture starts to form. You don't connect the dots. It's just a mass of what's all this about.
The kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure.
Someone born in the United States is not more special than someone born in Mexico. Someone who is white is not more special than someone who is black. They're just vehicles for the consciousness to experience.
brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people.
War is peace. Freedom is slavery. Ignorance is strength.
Humans as a species are prone to amnesia. Those who do not remember the past are doomed to repeat it. It is thus imperative that these all-important matters be thoroughly explored and not left up to blind faith.
It's about time some of you got acquainted with the real hard truth.
What you are now experiencing is the vibration of air particles being transformed into electrical signals by your senses and DNA, then sent to the brain where they are decoded into sounds. I'm your host, Ryan Gable, and you are listening to The Secret Teachings. Our website is www.thesecretteachings.info, and if you go to the website, you can find a full list of all of our past episodes that you can download and or stream for free. You don't have to pay for them, and you don't have to sign up. You just go to the website, click the link, and find the show that you want to download or stream. It is completely free. On the website, you will also find a top news tab with all of the news articles we discuss on the program each week. You will find a guest tab at the top of the page with a list of all of our past guests and current guests, their biographies, links to the shows where we had them on the program, and usually a link to their website if they have one. Our guest today is award-winning journalist and author Jim Marrs. He comes back to The Secret Teachings for the second time. He's a native of Fort Worth, Texas. He's taught a college course in the Kennedy assassination, and since the 1980s, he's been a freelance writer, author, and public relations consultant. He's got plenty of books out there. I'm sure you've at least heard of some. Maybe you've read some yourself. I've read almost all of his books. I own, I think, all of his books. Alien Agenda is very famous and very popular. Ruled by Secrecy, and his new book, Population Control, which ties in with what we've been discussing in the past month here on The Secret Teachings, talking about biodiversity, Agenda 21, and depopulation, or a form of population control that's not necessarily just strictly about eugenics or euthanasia, but population control, whether that's perhaps social engineering as well. We've talked a lot about that recently, and there's many forms of controlling society. A lot of this is now being done through these fake green programs, these smart devices, thinking that it's a smartphone, it's a smart television, it's a smart home, it's a smart car. So since it's smart, if we say that we don't like this technology, then we must be dumb. It kind of dehumanizes us. It puts us on a lower level. We're not as intelligent, so we just need to go along with Google and DARPA and the companies developing this tech, even though it, in some cases, such as the smart meter, is dangerous, not just a health hazard, but these things are exploding, they're catching on fire. There is the issues with the health issues with them, as well as the CFL bulbs, skin irritations, carcinogenic chemicals coming off of these, high levels of mercury in the CFL bulbs, and of course you have the privacy concern with the information being collected by Google and by Amazon. Being able to predict the future, being able to collect so much information, and being able to know, for example, Amazon can track what you look at, where your cursor is, through the video camera. If you have one on your computer built in or you have one attached, they can track your eyes. We know the Xbox does this as well, and I don't know if the PlayStation does unless you get that little camera addition to it, but the Xbox has the Kinect that comes with some of them, and it tracks your eyes. It can look at your eyes and watch them go to certain ads, so it will send you maybe a coupon for that pizza ad. This is way beyond advertising, and it's not just done on a marketing level. It's done on a massive level to collect this information in order to map out the future based on previous actions. And by doing that, these companies not only are able to sell you products really before you purchase them, or in Amazon's case, ship you products before you purchase them, before you order them, but these companies are able to gather so much information they can, along with governmental fractions, be able to predict your future movements. And this gets into an area known as pre-crime. We've talked about this in the past. I remember when we were at Rollins College Radio, and we were talking about movies and film and how that influences our reality, and vice versa, how our reality influences film. Because a lot of people obviously think that I get all of my ideas because I watched 1984, or because I watched Equilibrium, or because we watched The Matrix. It's like, no, those television shows, those movies, they get their ideas, the writers do, from real life. And when we use those movies as an example, or there's television shows as an example, that's all that they are. They're an example. It's a visual stimulant. It's a visual representation of what we're talking about. And when you look at the ways in which the pre-crime has been rolled out now, they're using complex algorithms to be able to predict whether or not you could perhaps be a violent extremist based on your Facebook posts, based on your Twitter account, based on who you like, what you like, who you follow, based on photos you post. All of this gets put into a massive database. And there's so many different levels, whether it's a privacy concern, whether it's a moral concern, an ethical concern. In cases, again, of the smart meters, it might be a health hazard, it might be a fire hazard. There's so many different levels to this. And again, a lot of people sit back, and even if they're aware of the issues with some of these devices, they'll say, well, you're worried about the government, you're worried about Big Brother, you must have watched 1984, maybe you read the book. Big Brother doesn't exist. Well, the thing is, when I sit back and I look at what's going on, I'm not as concerned about Big Brother as I am about some guy down the street who got crafty with a computer and decided to hack into my computer and watch me through my video cam. This is happening so often now. People having pictures taken of themselves, videos of people having sex through their computer, through their smart television. It's a complete invasion of privacy, and we're voting for this. Not by going into a voting booth, not by donating money to some political campaign. We are voting for this with our money, and by giving that money to the companies that supply us with this technology, whether it's the smartphone or whether it's the smart television, which is extremely popular. I worked for a while at Target, and I worked in electronics, and when I would tell people about the smart televisions, they'd always ask me, well, what's the big difference between the smart TV and between just a regular conventional TV? And I would tell them, I'd say, well, in my opinion, I'd get the basic TV. I don't really watch TV, but I'd just get the basic TV. There's no real need to have internet on your television. I mean, people already have computers, they have tablets, they have phones. Really, we need internet on the television now, too. And I think that's crazy. So I tell people, well, I don't really like the smart televisions, and they'd ask me why. And I would tell them, well, first of all, if we go to Samsung's website, and I have a link in my book, The Grand Illusion, to that. There's a link if you have the PDF, and there is the actual web address to go directly to Samsung's website. Or you could just go to the internet and type in Samsung.com and check out their privacy policy. And it specifically says that information that you divulge in front of your TV or in the vicinity of your television that could be somehow related to what the government might consider to be criminal activity, in any sense of the word. It could be political dissidence for all that matter. And that information can be sent to local police departments, and it can be sent to a state and federal authority if the information is deemed flaggable, if you will. So that is just straight on their website. I mean, it's not something I made up. I'm not paraphrasing it. It's directly on Samsung's website. And other smart television companies that manufacture them have the exact same types of policies. I mean, how many people, be honest with yourself, how many people really read the terms and services agreement? Maybe you get 2 paragraphs in and you just click accept because you want to play the new video game, because you want to watch the new movie, because you want to access the cool features of your phone or the TV. We're voting for this enslavement. The SS does not have to come to our homes and install the telescreens. They don't have to come to our homes and install the wiretapping, the bugs. They don't have to do any of this. All they have to do now is say, well, we have an iPhone 8 out, and everybody lines up like zombies, beats each other down, just to get that new phone, which in less than 10 months will be obsolete, and they'll have to upgrade and pay all this money for another one. It's purchasing your own servitude. And just like Aldous Huxley said, who wrote A Brave New World, about a society that was fully medicated and children were raised as wards of the state. They were born out of state hatcheries where they did not know their parents, and we're seeing more and more of that taking place in the genetic modification of man, and having 3 parents to some children in some cases. There was a story about that in the UK. But in that, he wrote that book, A Brave New World. Aldous Huxley was actually a teacher of Eric Blair or George Orwell, who wrote 1984 and who wrote Animal Farm. And Aldous Huxley, his brother was actually, there's so many different things that come to mind. His brother, Julian Huxley, actually ran UNESCO, which called the year 2005 through 2015, this year, the year for education on sustainable development, targeting children and filling their minds with climate change, climate myth propaganda. Not that the climate doesn't change, but that the sun is massively responsible for the altering of the climate, not to mention the 4 seasons. So the climate does change. It's not necessarily your fault for breathing. As a small contribution and very little at that. But anyway, Aldous Huxley said that we will eventually get people to love their servitude. And that is what's happening. And that's a paraphrase. I think the actual quote was, we are working on methods to get people to actually love their servitude. And that is what's happening, ladies and gentlemen. We are beginning to love our servitude. The walls close in closer and closer and closer every single day. Look at New York and, some of these big cities. Obviously, New York, there's millions of people living there. And they're looking for an influx, expecting an influx of 1 million more people in the next couple of years moving into the New York City area. And just imagine how much more crowded and packed that will be. So the solution to that is to put everybody into what they call micro apartments. And, when we start looking at whether it's the smart technology or whether it's eugenics, I was actually talking to a friend about this the other day who's a huge history buff. We talk about these topics all the time. We grew up in high school together talking about stuff like this even before I got into radio, really specifically focused on history. And him and I always have thought, eugenics as a concept is not necessarily a really terrible idea. It's kind of like communism. It's not necessarily a terrible idea. It's just the way that it's carried out becomes a terrible idea when it's carried out by psychopaths and technocrats and people that are completely obsessed with control. The concept of euthanasia, euthanizing the elderly, for example, again, not necessarily a horrifying idea. Maybe humans are not as spiritually evolved to be able to understand or comprehend the ramifications of programs such as that. But the problem truly results in, again, the people making the decisions, the people that are choosing who will die, what ethnic, racial group needs to be eradicated. It's like Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, who worked with the Bush family funding supporting some of the first fundraisers for Planned Parenthood. Father Bush, I believe, was also, it was Prescott Bush was also a treasurer, I believe, for Planned Parenthood after the organization started. It was an offshoot, basically, or really you could say it's an offshoot, but really the foundation for the Nazi eugenics movement coming out of the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Racial Hygiene, very influenced by the Rockefellers, lots of money donated by the Rockefellers to found Planned Parenthood. This is a Margaret Sanger who thinks and has said, who spoke at KKK Klan meetings and said on many multiple occasions and wrote how blacks in particular were like weeds. They needed to be eradicated. The best thing that some of these families could do for their children is to kill them. I mean, these are all paraphrasable quotes from Margaret Sanger, but you can look up these quotations online. The woman was a massive eugenicist and all about that, I guess you could say, a type of white supremacy master race. So why is it that these people, these self-proclaimed elitists, get to decide who lives and who dies? I mean, at the end of the day, I might not have a problem with the idea, with the concept of eugenics, with the concept of euthanasia, but when it comes to people that are making the decisions, I have a problem with them. When I see news stories such as Hillary Clinton doesn't know how to use a fax machine, didn't know when there were cabinet meetings going on, and can't even pour herself a glass of tea, I mean, she has to have an aide do that for her. Not that she's a dumb woman. The woman's pretty smart to some extent. I would say that you have to be, even to be a puppet of that magnitude. But to not be able to do those minuscule, meaningless, just mundane things to the average person, the question really boils down to who's more expendable? People like that, or the average everyday person who might actually truly be producing something that's of some type of spiritual or physical local essence to society and humanity as a whole. Who's more expendable? And people like that are telling us that we have to get rid of certain parts of the population because they're expendable, because they're worthless bottom feeders. Is it really those people's decisions to decide who lives and who dies? And at some point, it won't even be a matter of some elitists' opinion on who lives and who dies. It will be uploaded into some type of autonomous warfare, into drones. We're already seeing this, where they want to put drones on the battlefield to make the decision between who lives and who dies. This is more than an ethical or a moral quandary. This is a massive, massive problem. Basically, I think what this is this is a type of extinction level event that we're facing, but it's so slow that we don't realize it's happening. The process is so slow, and we've been so integrated into it, so desensitized by the rhetoric and the propaganda that we don't even see it when it goes on in front of our face. And when we do see it, we try to think of any excuse, no matter how morally and unethically corrupt and horrifying the situation might be, such as Planned Parenthood selling baby parts, partial birth abortions, keeping the baby alive, harvesting the organs, selling the body parts, making billions of dollars. We say, well, we still need to keep Planned Parenthood because they provide different things to the community. They provide essential services to women. And you have people running around screaming, Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. And then you never really hear anybody say all lives matter. Very few say that, and if you do, then you're a racist. You're a white supremacist. It's like, really, I'm a white supremacist for saying all lives, including Black lives, matter. Yet the people that say Black lives matter, are so brainwashed that you really can't have a conversation with these people. They're so indulged by the rhetoric. And they've been so deceived. I mean, these groups are a really type of psyop. They are controlled and funded for the most part by people like George Soros, who was another major Nazi. You look at everything that goes on in the news, whether it's the race baiting or it's the hatred that's always produced towards, and now it's moving towards the white population. It's all your fault. And then you turn around and you look at Planned Parenthood. Where are most of the Planned Parenthood facilities located? They're located in basically ghettos. 2 to 1 black children are aborted over any other ethnic group. That's a fact, especially in places like New York. Planned Parenthood was set up specifically to eradicate certain portions of the population, specifically the black population. That's a fact. The head of the organization made that claim on several occasions. She spoke at KKK Klan meetings that came out of the Knights of the Golden Circle, which had a connection to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. This stuff is 100% real. So before you get behind any of these organizations or these agencies that look like they're promoting good and look like they're helping women, all you're doing is participating in your own demise. You're participating in the same way where people buy these smartphones and smart TVs and they just inundate themselves in all of this quote-unquote smart technology that has all of the health issues, the privacy issues, the safety issues. they are buying their own prison. They're paying for it. They're voting for it with their money, and they, for the most part, if they're not aware, and some that are aware, are loving it. The people that are participating knowingly within some of these Planned Parenthood branches, knowingly selling these baby parts. You are, whether you indirectly are doing it or you directly are involved, you are just as guilty. Knowing of a crime and not doing anything to expose it is no different than doing the crime yourself, whether you go in and rob the bank or you sit outside in the getaway car. Anyway, though, our website, www.thesecretteachings.info. If you missed the last 4 weeks, we've done 4 weeks on sustainable development, population control, and Agenda 21, the agenda for the 21st century. We've talked about so much in the last month, and at the end of last week's program, we also had Karen A. Dahlman on the program to talk about her new book. Last week's show was also 4 hours long. So a total of 10 hours in the last month of The Secret Teachings, and you can get all of that completely free at thesecretteachings.info. Of course, at the very top right of the page, we rarely ask for donations, but if you would like to help support The Secret Teachings, all of the money goes to helping me to be able to purchase new items, whether it's a cord or an adapter for the little setup that I have here to do the radio program, or, of course, buy myself food sometimes, or maybe pay for other things I need in my life because I don't get paid to do this radio show. I do it out of passion. I do it out of dedication, and I know that a lot of you out there, I'm getting more and more emails every single week of people saying they love the show, and if you want the show to continue and to expand, any donations obviously help go towards pushing this show and making it expand into allowing me to be able to do more programs a week. Primarily, I try to do the best I can with the one, which is why we have so much information covered in 3 hours. It's like a marathon, and I'm out of breath by the end of it. Any donations over $20, and I will send you a copy of one of my books, either The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception. It is 738 pages. Any donations over $50, and I will send you both of my books, which include The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception and False Prophets and the Lovers of Children. That book is 263 pages, and both books are also available at Amazon.com now. So if you go to Amazon.com, type in my name, Ryan Gable, and type in False Prophets or The Grand Illusion, those books will come up. They were also available if you go to www.thesecretteachings.info. That's www.thesecretteachings.info. And you click at the very top of the page on one of the links, and you can purchase the books from there. So I am Ryan Gable, and we will be back in just a couple of minutes. Our guest today, again, the award-winning journalist and author, the one and only Jim Marrs, here to talk about his book, Population Control. He's also got other books, Alien Agenda, The War on Freedom, and Our Occulted History. His website, JimMarrs.com. That's JimMarrs.com. Check out his website. We'll be right back with Jim. Stay tuned. At The Secret Teachings, we are not a part of any group, label, and we do not attempt to fearmonger. Some of the topics we discuss may seem scary, so I advise you not to be afraid, but to be informed as we discuss current events and ancient history, astrotheology and symbolism, the paranormal and the occult, the esoteric, health, and much more. I am not here to tell you that what I say is truth, but to allow you to decide for yourself based on the evidence presented and the dots connected. Information is not negative. It is how you view it that determines the dimensional characteristics of either dual aspect of negativity or positivity. Try as you might, but no amount of disinformation, propaganda, rhetoric, or trolling will change the truth. The truth is the truth, regardless if the masses accept it as is, or if it is accepted by only 1 out of billions. It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. For more information on airtimes and free downloads of past episodes of The Secret Teachings, you can visit www.thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info. The physical world we see with our brains is truly an illusion, an energetic expression of consciousness. We see less than 1% of what exists within white visible light, yet profess to understand the nature of existence. A physical matter made of hollow particles perceived as physical only by our DNA, brain, and 5-sense decoding system, decoding a series of biological zeros and ones in the forms of A, C, T, and G. Occultists call this the Grand Illusion, and this is the name of my first book, The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception. My name is Ryan Gable, and I'm the author of The Grand Illusion and host of the radio show The Secret Teachings. It is my perspective that we are all slaves to perception, programmed to react rather than to think critically, programmed to consume, to mock those who are different than you, and to outcast others that are different than the acceptable social norms. In the book The Grand Illusion, I have broken down what we call reality into 3 parts. In part 1, I explore the big questions of who we are, where did we come from, and of course religious teachings rooted in astronomy, commonly known as astrotheology. In the second part of The Grand Illusion, I explore the history of central banks and world wars, international networks of child abusers, geoengineering of our environment, secret societies, UFOs, and the paranormal. In the third part of The Grand Illusion, I explore political assassinations, symbols, and sacred geometry, and how, with the evidence I've provided, my belief is that events like 9/11-2001 and the 2012 London Olympics were mass energy rituals. The book is over 700 pages and filled with years of my own research, which I believe is separated from others in this field by the way that I approach such topics, such as UFOs, how some will just simply either believe or automatically disbelieve, choosing a predetermined, pre-conclusive side in that argument, when in fact I believe that the alien myth is some type of cover for something else, and we'd explore that in The Grand Illusion. How secret societies are not a group of men, sometimes women, worshipping the devil, that in fact they are remnants of ancient mystery schools. And of course, my rare coverage of Gaza and the international network of pedophiles. But regardless of your opinions or beliefs, The Grand Illusion has something for everyone, including an entire chapter on health, my own personal experiences and how to eat non-GMO, information on hidden ingredients and deceptive labels from companies, as well as the ingredients and ways to opt out of vaccinations legally. Now, I could tell you that my book, The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception, will change the world or help you to survive the end times or get you closer to God. But that's exactly the type of deceptive mentality that I attempt to expose in the book, living without fear and instead being informed. If you would like a copy of The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception, you can purchase the copy at thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info. Click on the Shop tab, and you have your choice of softcover or PDF. There is no regulation or editing of what I wrote in this 700-page book. And if you'd like a free sample, you can email me at rdgable@yahoo.com. That's over 700 pages, 3 parts, and 13 chapters. Visit thesecretteachings.info and click on the Shop tab today to order your copy of The Grand Illusion: Slaves to Perception. The book will also be available from Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Don't be afraid, be informed.
For the last time, I'm pretty sure what's killing the crops is this Brawndo stuff.
The Brawndow's got what plants crave. It's got electrolytes.
So wait a minute. What you're saying is that you want us to put water on the crops?
Yes. The plants aren't growing. So I'm pretty sure that the Brondo's not working. Now, I'm no botanist, but I do know that if you put water on plants, they grow. Why don't we just try it, okay? And not worry about what plants crave.
Brondo's got what plants crave.
Yeah, it's got electrolytes.
What are electrolytes? Do you even know?
It's what they use to make Brondo.
There also exists an extraordinary opportunity to form for the first time in history a truly global society. Will be the emergence of a new international order.
To lead in shaping a new world order for the 21st century.
We meet here at a moment of testing for Europe and the United States, and for the international order that we have worked for generations to build.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
I sense that the federal government has taken over. You know, there was one time I threw out the term, there's been a CIA coup. It's a secret government. We don't know what they do. The Congress doesn't know what they do. They rig elections. They start wars.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well-funded.
President Bush signed a formal agreement that will end the United States as we know it. And he took the step without approval from either the U.S. Congress or the people of the United States.
In order to ensure the security and continuing prosperity, the Republic will be reorganized into the first galactic empire for a safe and secure society.
So this is how liberty dies. With thunderous applause.
Gentlemen, we have called you together to inform you that we are going to overthrow the United States government. You still think that jet fuel brought down the World Trade Center? Does anybody else see a problem here? If the government has nothing to hide, why are they so afraid to answer a few questions? This story does not add up.
Welcome back to The Secret Teachings. I am your host, Ryan Gable. Our website is www.thesecretteachings.info. That's www.thesecretteachings.info. And our guest today is award-winning journalist and author Jim Marrs. His website is jimmarrs.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. It's also linked up on our website. He is a native of Fort Worth, Texas. He earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in journalism from the University of North Texas in 1966 and attended graduate school at Texas Tech. He has worked for several Texas newspapers, taught a college course on the Kennedy assassination, very interesting, and since 1980 he has been a freelance writer, author, and public relations consultant. Some of his books that you may have heard of and maybe even read, I know I've read I think almost all of them, Alien Agenda, Rule by Secrecy, The War on Freedom, Our Occulted History, and his newest book, Population Control. Jim, welcome to The Secret Teachings. How's life down there in Texas?
It's hot right now, but other than that, we're doing great. Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, it's sort of hot here, too. We've got a bunch of wildfires going over here in Idaho.
Well, I hope they get those contained. Those can be pretty bad. I know my places. Over the years, I've suffered 3 or 4 big grass fires that came through.
Oh, really? Near your home there in Texas?
Yeah, right through the home. Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting pretty close. I sat outside last night, and you could watch the smoke, and you could see the light over the horizon, the smoke, and you can smell it really bad. It's getting closer and closer. Anyway,
that's pretty scary.
Yeah, it can be pretty scary. Anyway, Jim, I wanted to get your take before we get into population control. Once again, we come to election time, and we see the country basically has turned into an oligarchy. We see these two dynastical criminal families, such as the Clintons and the Bush family. What is your take on this and the election as a whole? What do you think?
Well, it's amazing to me that I don't know of anyone who is totally satisfied with the status of the United States today in so many different areas. And if you go back, you could probably lay it at the feet of the Bush administrations and the Clinton administrations. Okay, that's where it really took a turn for the worse. And here we are coming in the election of 2016, and people are seriously talking about another Bush or another Clinton. What's wrong with people? You know, I think it was Albert Einstein said, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
That's right, or like George Bush said famously, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice. Point is, once you fool me once, you can't fool me again.
Couldn't even get his little adage correct.
But you're right. I mean, it's amazing how people seem to just have amnesia, and no matter how many acts of absolute criminality these two families commit, they are still put into the limelight as our saviors.
And that should prove to any thinking person that we are no longer in control in this country. There is an oligarchy that is now running this place, and it is corporate owners. And that is exactly the subject of my new book, Population Control, How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us. Okay? And first, let me make a distinction between owners and administrators. When we think of the big, giant corporations, we think of the president, the vice presidents, you know. Now, those are not even really the people I'm talking about. Most of the presidents, vice presidents of these giant international corporations, most of them are probably good, decent folks and well-intentioned, and they're educated. Probably most of them have Harvard business degrees, but they're not in charge. They are capable administrators. They are put in those offices of these large corporations to make sure that the corporation operates efficiently and that the profit line stays solid and goes up, okay? Now, what we're talking about are the people who control these corporations, and now you're talking about perhaps a CEO, but also perhaps just one of the directors, or perhaps an unnamed, unknown majority stockholder. Most people have the erroneous idea that you have to have 51% of a company before you can control it, but that's not necessarily true. If you own only 10% of a major corporation, but no one else owes more than that, then you are in charge, and you make the decisions. And these positions are held by the very super rich, the 1%, as the Occupy movement calls it, although it's actually more like 1/10 of 1%, and they have cross-ownership. They'll own a controlling interest in one corporation and controlling interest in another, and that's why they dominate the corporate world, and this is why, to include the 6 major corporations that are constitute the major media. In other words, the people who decide what we see and hear 24/7, 365 days a year. And this is why this is such an insidious plot, and that we don't really know that much about it, and we're never told about this. We are presented by these media giants a fairy tale picture of the world, and it's not necessarily how the world actually operates. And so here we come into another election that's just totally going to be manipulated and controlled. For example, right now, they've thrown out Donald Trump, who has his own money and can pretty well finance his own campaign, and they're portraying him as a big spoiler, a big danger to the establishment Democratic and Republican parties, and it's not even true. Yeah, I'm sorry. Trump is a huge supporter of Israel. He's going to continue to support our aggressive moves in the Middle East, and he has nothing against corporate business. In fact, I predict that he's there as a straw man. He is saying the things that so many people want to hear, and bringing up the topics that we actually should be discussing, but in such a way that it's easy to knock him down and say, well, he's just radical and he hates women and he hates immigrants and blah, 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 none of which is particularly true. But this is the way they manipulate the media. And then, therefore, they'll get to the Republican National Convention, and they will find a more moderate person to put in there, probably Jeb Bush, since he's part of the dynasty. And Trump then will say, well, then I'm going to form a third party. He'll split the conservative vote, and Hillary or whoever the Democrats decide to back will get in.
That's so incredible to me, Jim, especially paying attention to the news recently. Just a couple of things that have happened. Jeb Bush comes out and says, in order to defeat ISIS, we need to start bombing Assad, which is very strange to me because Assad has also been fighting ISIS. Hillary Clinton, she finally turns over her server to the FBI, but she had it professionally wiped, which is a complete obstruction of justice. But since the administration controls the State Department, nothing happens. And yet, these unbelievable acts of ignorance and criminality, and yet these people are still, to back up what you said in terms of the media, promoted by the media, which just shows you no matter what kind of crimes they commit, they are still the chosen dynastic families to run the perception of a free and open society that we supposedly have.
That's exactly true. And yet, if you and I, if we get caught by some of the new Israeli-trained local police jaywalking, they will harass the hell out of us, fine us, and if we try to argue or resist, beat us and maybe even shoot us.
That's right. I mean, look at what the EPA has been doing, fining people for chimney smoke or backyard barbecues.
Yeah, exactly. And what's even worse is, and I know in the Northwest they've actually prosecuted people for hoarding rainwater.
Yes.
They claim that the water is public resource and that the government controls it. In fact, if you look at one of Obama's recent presidential edicts, you find that in the event of a national emergency, which used to be nuclear war and now is apparently just anything that's the president wants to sign his name to, guess who's in charge of all the water supplies of this country? The Secretary of Defense. Now, figure that one out.
Well,
Although I can tell you what the deal is there. The head of Dow Chemical has been quoted saying in the 21st century, well, that's now, water will become the new oil. And just
that's right.
And just like they gained total control over the oil industry all back in the late 1800s, they're trying mightily to get total control over the water of this country. They're making it illegal to have rain barrels. They're making it illegal to have your own pond. If you have your own well, you have to put all that water into the thing. And then what are they doing with the water? Well, they're putting lithium in it. They're putting other chemicals in it. They're putting mercuries in it. They're putting fluoride in it. Sodium fluoride, good grief, man. The Nazis found out that you put a little bit of sodium fluoride in the water and it will dumb people down and dull them down to where they'll be passive and non-resistant. So they put it in the water of the concentration camps to keep the inmates passive and non-resistant. And now 70% of the water supplies of this country, most of the big cities, they're putting sodium fluoride in the water, which used to be sold as a rat poison.
Rat poison.
It's a poison.
It also comes from the aluminum industry. I think after World War II, they had all of this byproduct chemical waste left over, and they basically sold it to the government and to the American Dental Association as a way to tell people this would help your teeth, which to me doesn't make any sense because these people tend not to really care about us at any other point. So why all of a sudden, right? They want to help us with our teeth.
Yeah, well, it's getting rid of their waste is what it is, and not only the aluminum industry, which of course was burgeoning after World War II, but then also a lot of people don't realize, but the sodium fluoride is a waste product of the manufacture of nuclear weapons. Okay?
That's right.
And so all of a sudden they've got all this sodium fluoride, and by international convention it's illegal to dump it in the rivers or the streams because they flow into the oceans and they can pollute the whole ocean. So there's an international convention saying you can't do that. So they found somebody who's willing to do a little study and concluded that in children, mostly males, between the ages of 6 and 12, a little bit of sodium fluoride might reduce the number of cavities. And based on that, they sold it to the American Dental Association, whose members still are told, and most of them truly believe, that this is a benefit to society. And so then they got it in as to all these cities to just put it in the water supply. And, of course, here's the thing. Here's the clincher, Ryan. If you go to the doctor and the doctor prescribes the drugs for you and it ends up harming you, and you can show that he did not give you informed consent, in other words, you were not informed that this drug could harm you, you can sue your doctor. And this has been done, and cases have been won. And it's called informed consent. You have to be informed what the dangers of the drug are, and then if you give your consent, that's okay. But if not, then you can actually sue the doctors. Now that's medical. That's professional physicians. With these people that are putting the sodium fluoride, this rat poison, into your water are not even medical personnel. They're just city employees.
That's
They're
right.
told, hey, go dump this in the water supply.
Well,
and how much are you getting and how strong and how often, who knows?
That's right. They're not even controlling the dosages. And, you know, here in Boise, Idaho, where I live now, Jim, I went down to the city hall to see if I could get a copy of the local water report. They're supposed to produce this for every city in the United States. And they told me, and also when I called them, that they don't know what goes in the water. And I said, well, you guys don't produce a report? You don't have any information on that? They said, no, you'd actually have to go through a company called United Water. And what I found out is United Water is a corporation that is a subsidiary of Suez Water, which built the Suez Canal. And they are one of two companies that control 70% of the world's private water supply. And when I contacted that company, they also told me that the local city governments have absolutely no say in what goes into the water. It's the corporation's decision.
Oh, well, that's real reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Come on,
exactly.
people, wake up out there. What's wrong with you, man? They've been drinking the water.
They have been drinking the water, Jim. Mixed it with some Kool-Aid, I think.
Well, I think so. It's incredible. So, and by the way, another aspect of this water is the controversy over fracking, which is short for hydraulic fracturing, which is where they take a bunch of water, up to 8 million gallons for each well, and there's like 500,000 wells in the United States alone, and they inject all of this water along with 40,000 chemicals, including heavy metals and really hazardous materials, and they inject it at high pressure into the ground to open up fissures in the ground. Sometimes they even put steel ball bearings in there to keep these fissures open so that they can get more raw petroleum and gas out from underground, you know. And what they're doing is, not only does this pollute the whole system because it's ruining water wells and the chemicals are leaching into the aquifers, but also they pump the water back out and then they let it sit in open pits to evaporate, and now all these things, all these substances are now in the air around these open air pits, and that people are having to breathe, and they're just causing all kinds of health problems. But it's also causing earthquakes. In Oklahoma, for example, up until recently, up until the last 20 years, they averaged about maybe one earthquake a year. And then just this year, the first few months, they had 30, and they've determined because of the fracking. And it's all because they say that we're experiencing peak oil, that we're running out of petroleum, and we've got to do all of this hazardous and harmful fracking to get more petroleum, which is not even true. That's a total phony argument. And how can I say that? Because anytime somebody tells you we're running out of oil, just give them 3 words: Bakken Rock Formation. The Bakken Rock Formation, B-A-K-K-E-N, stretches from the middle of the United States up through Canada, and it is untapped petroleum. And the experts claim that even at increased rates of consumption, there's enough oil there to be developed that could last us for the next 2,000 years. But, of course, we don't want to do that because we're already choking ourselves to death on the pollution caused by petroleum, running our gasoline engines and everything else. So
it's artificial
so many different ways that we could be doing things.
It sounds like artificial scarcity, first of all, Jim.
Exactly.
I also wanted to add to the aspect of fluoride and the American Dental Association. I had a friend who went to a dentist a couple of years ago, and they had mercury fillings, and I told them to go and get those taken out. And when they asked the dentist if they could get them removed and replaced with something, the dentist asked, why do you want them removed? And they told the dentist, well, because mercury is poisonous, and I wasn't aware of all the effects until I got them, and I started having different problems. And the dentist told her, no, there's no problem with mercury. Mercury is completely safe, which is really amazing to me, Jim. It's the same thing when doctors tell pregnant mothers, don't eat tuna, don't eat certain fish because of the mercury levels, but then they give them a vaccine with 50,000 times more mercury. It's just completely backwards.
And in that case, you're not eating it and ingesting it, in which case your body's defense mechanisms may be able to cope with it to some degree. You're actually injecting it directly into your bloodstream.
That's right. That's right.
It's a whole different ballgame.
Well, you also have mercury in these smart bulbs, the CFL bulbs. The mercury levels are so high in these things, part of this smart grid, and so many of these now are being dumped into landfills where the mercury is seeping into the ground and into the groundwater, which is causing even more pollution. And yet, since they're considered green, that doesn't seem to be a problem.
Exactly. And back to your story of the dentist, I would be willing to bet that this dentist is a perfectly fine fellow, might even go to church on Sunday. You know, the problem is not that he's some kind of evil conspirator. No, quite the opposite. The fact is, though, is that he has bought into the propaganda that's been put out by the American Dental Association, who's been bought and paid for by these corporations who have, and that's another thing I found in researching for my book, Population Control. A lot of these so-called studies that are supposed to be aimed at determining how safe some of these substances really are, for the most part, these studies have only been done by the very corporations that's manufacturing these things.
That's right.
And what we're finding out now is that they have lied, and they have covered up.
Especially with genetically modified foods.
Oh, exactly. And even some drugs. Vioxx killed 40,000 people before they finally took it off the market in 2004. And now it turns out that the pharmaceutical corporation that sold it actually knew that this was a danger, but they hid that from the federal regulators and from the public. And this is what's going on, folks. Here's the difference. Anyone who knows the situation would agree with me, and they know that this is happening and that they're doing things to us that are not helpful and not healthy. They are harmful. In fact, some cases, deadly, okay? The only difference is I'm telling you this is not just happenstance. This is not just corporate greed. This is a decision at the very top of the food chain to get rid of a bunch of us.
And that is population control. Jim, the last 4 weeks we've actually been talking about Agenda 21 biodiversity, which is really the eradication of diversity to consolidate power, whether it's for agriculture, food through these companies like Monsanto, Syngenta, DuPont, Dow Chemical, the collection of water resources, consolidating those down, like you mentioned, and to the big companies that control the media. It seems as if all of these companies collectively are beginning to come together under a global corporation, which is now being orchestrated through a form of world government. And we've already seen the Pope call for world government. We've seen them call for a world currency. That's all part of a much larger agenda, and population control, I think, is part of the vehicle to bring in that world agenda.
That's right. In fact, they've even written that in stone, so to speak. If you'll go and consider the Georgia Guidestones, which is a granite monument in Georgia, commissioned by a man who gave the name of Christian, although he admitted that was not his real name. So the whole genesis of this project is kind of unknown and mysterious. But it says these monuments is to prevent a more rational world. And the very first admonition is maintain the human population to 500 million for balance in nature. Well, that sounds real good. And I know a lot of people, especially if you live in a big city and you get caught in the traffic jams, you probably are, you know, it's an easy sell. Yeah, there's just too damn many people. But actually, that's another false premise. But the main thing is that the population of the world today is about 7.5 billion. So if they do reduce the world's population to 500 million, what's supposed to happen to the other 7 billion of us? And more important, who's going to make the decision as to what happens to those 7 billion that need to go?
That's right. I've actually been to the Georgia Guidestones, and it has a very strange energy there. Have you ever been there?
I have not been there physically, no.
I have a quote for you that a listener sent in. It's from CNN founder Ted Turner. He said, a total population of 250 to 300 million people, a 95% decline from present levels would be ideal. And Ted Turner is another one of these major, I would say, globalist type of eugenicist. And these people, such as the Clintons, the Bushes, these elitists, they have these personas about them that they're better than us, that they're the ones to make the decisions on who lives and who dies. But to me, Jim, it's really insane because when you isolate one of these people in particular and you look at what they say and what they do and how manipulative they are, these people are not necessarily even smarter than us. A lot of them are completely brainwashed zombies and drones in and of themselves. I mean, it came out recently, not that she's completely dumb, but Hillary Clinton didn't even know how to work a fax machine. The woman didn't even know how to pour her pour a cup of tea in a glass for herself. She had to have an aide do it for her. I mean, at the end of the day, Jim, who's really more expendable here?
Exactly. That reminds me of when George Herbert Walker Bush was president, and they took him to a supermarket for a photo op, and here he is, and the cashier's running the products across the little infrared scanner, and it's going beep, 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 and Bush says, "What's that noise?" He had no idea what it's like to go shop in a supermarket. Because they don't do that. They've got people that do that.
That's right.
And you're right. Now, most of these people, the Bushes, who owe their prominence to the Harrimans, the Mrs. Harriman, who started the whole eugenics movement back in the late 1800s, and along with people like Margaret Sanger, who founded Planned Parenthood, and who said Negroes are not like weeds, we need to exterminate them.
That's right.
They make no bones about their plans. Prince Philip, of England, the powerful royal member of the international elite, he says, quote, "In the event that I am reincarnated, I would like to return as a deadly virus in order to contribute something to solve overpopulation," end quote. This guy wants you dead. And so do the Bushes, and so do the Clintons. They laugh at you. They laugh at the average person. And they have no idea what it's like to live a normal lifetime, normal lifestyle. And yet they expect you to run down and vote for them. It's an amazing situation. Ryan, in the Middle Ages, when the king's troops came around and took your oldest daughter and half your crop, you knew exactly where the pressure was coming from, but at least you had a choice. You could put up with it, or you could gather your friends and neighbors and stage a revolution, which, of course, happened throughout history. Today, the pressure is coming from these corporations who, in turn, control the federal government, and and we're paying for it. We pay them money to do this.
We're paying for our own enslavement.
We buy their products, and we pay our taxes, so these people can come and tyrannize us and try to kill us.
That's right. That's what I was talking about before you came on with the smart devices and with the technology. We've been bought off. We're paying for our own servitude. And just like Aldous Huxley, who wrote A Brave New World, he said eventually we will be able to get people to love their servitude. And that's what we're seeing, Jim. And as a matter of fact, eugenicists like Bertrand Russell once said that, quote, diet, injections, which food and vaccinations, and injunctions will combine from a very early age to produce a sort of character and the sort of beliefs that the authorities consider desirable, and any serious criticism of the powers that be will become psychologically impossible. And that's personally what I see. People, even if they know what's going on, they've been conditioned so that it's psychologically impossible for them to do anything about it.
Exactly, and it's only going to get worse now that they're beginning to mandate vaccinations. Now, vaccinations started off as a pretty good thing because it helped stop some of the major illnesses, and I'm not totally against vaccinations. If I cut myself with a rusty nail, I think I'm going to run and get a tetanus shot, But they have gone overboard. Now they want 40 different vaccinations for kids, some of them under 3 years old. And then they wonder why the incidence of autism has just been skyrocketing. And what they're doing now they're talking about coming out with these vaccines that are going to keep us mentally healthy because it's going to, soothe our brains and kill some of those little neural pathways in the brain that they say, well, if we leave them alone, they might become depressed or they might become addicted to something, and they're going to take care of that. What they're doing is they're turning people into zombies. And I think that's one of the reasons for the popularity of the zombie fad right now is because at a deep psychological level, we all are beginning to realize that for the most part, the whole bulk of the population is being turned into thoughtless zombies.
Look how people line up for Black Friday or for the new iPhone, Jim. It's just droves of zombies.
Now, you just hit upon something there. If these people want to push all this stuff, I guess they have the right to do that. The thing where I think they cross the line is when they're starting to mandate, like California says, you can't put your kid in school until they've had all these vaccinations and there's no opt-out, okay? You can't say no for religious reasons or health reasons or because on the advice of my personal doctor, I don't want those. You can't do it. They say you've got to have it. And that's the big difference because now if they want to offer this stuff and try to get people to take vaccines and take drugs that might, in effect, sterilize them, that's okay, but just don't make it mandatory. I know sometime back I remember reading in India, which truly has a burgeoning population problem, they were offering incentives to young men. They say, hey, come, we'll give you a transistor radio if you'll come get a vasectomy. Okay, now I can almost go along with that because, number one, if you're stupid enough to get a vasectomy in exchange for a transistor radio, then you probably need to have a vasectomy. But the main thing is that's a choice. You could go if that's what you want to do. That's fine. But once you cross the line and you mandate, and particularly if you're threatening fines or jail or prosecution,
exactly.
If you don't do something, that's force. That's tyranny. Is what that is.
Well, they do that at first. I remember a couple of years ago they had these programs through the Transportation Security Administration and through the Department of Transportation to the government, where they would offer people incentives at checkpoints along the interstate. I think they were doing this in Texas, where they would there were different programs. One was to give you'd roll up and they'd give you a vaccine. They'd come around to every window, give your kids and you a vaccine. You're supposed to be happy about it. Or they would go and they'd offer $50 for a cheek swab to collect your saliva for DNA or to take blood from you. And eventually, it becomes not a matter of choice, it becomes mandatory. And that's what they did in California through Senate Bill 277. And then what's amazing to me, Jim, is the governor of California, Jerry Brown, after they made it mandatory for children to be vaccinated, they started talking about adults. It's rolled out across the country. And then Jerry Brown got invited to a Vatican conference where he started yelling about climate change and population control. And then we have the Pope coming here to America to address Congress and to basically lecture us on those exact issues of population control. I mean, this is a sovereign body, a sovereign world leader coming to our Congress, a religious institution, to tell us how we should control the population. I think it's in September at the Sustainable Development Conference.
Yes, exactly. And that's when they're going to... I think they're leading up to this. I think that's going to precipitate a immediate hard push to enact all this stuff. This environmental climate change used to be global warming, and then when they found out that they were faking so much of that and blowing it out of proportion, now you don't hear global warming much anymore. You hear climate change, and there's really no question that there has been some changes and some erratic behavior on the part of the weather here. But I need to point out to you and all your listeners, and you're probably already aware of this, this is not anything we're doing, okay? Sorry, Al Gore. It is not our SUVs that is causing the climate change on this planet. How can I say that? Because it's happening solar system-wide. The sun is acting up. It's not having the sunspots like it used to. It's not having the solar flares. They're peaking and then going slower. The ice caps on Mars have been reducing. They're melting. Ice on the Jupiter's moons are melting. The outer planets are becoming more luminescent. Whatever it is, and there's a lot of speculation about what could be causing all this. I tend to listen to these people who say that there's some sort of a giant body moving into our solar system, which could account for these anomalous magnetic and gravitational stresses and changes that we're seeing, whether you want to call it Nibiru or Planet X or the 10th planet or Wormwood or whatever. Something's going on, and it's solar system-wide. So it's not just the Earth. They're using this as a pretext, again, to try to control the whole population and bring us under this one world government. Now, let's talk about that for a half second. The idea of one world government is not that bad, okay, in my book. And that's because, after all, we are one humanity. I can perfectly well see that in the not-too-distant future, someone may ask, where are you from? And you'll answer, I'm from Earth, okay? So we are one species, and we are all together on this one little planet on the outer rims of the Milky Way galaxy. So just the idea that we all get together and we have a global government, that's not so bad. What's bad is that the people pushing this concept, who are pushing Agenda 21, are pushing the United Nations in charge of everything, are these 1%, these wealthy elite, and they are pushing hard for a international socialist government, okay? And why? Because, number one, it's an easy sell. Hey, I'm for this socialist government, and we're here to take care of you, and we'll take care of you and feed you and clothe you and give you medical treatment from cradle to grave. Well, who can oppose that? Okay, but on any social program, no matter how benevolent, it requires a good, efficient administration, which generally means a central administration. You've got to have central authority to effectively administer one of these, any of these social programs. And they know that if they can get a one world government and with central authority, they have the money and the position to buy it up, and then they can run the world. One of the oldest agendas in human history.
Well, that's what we're seeing. There's a couple of things you said I wanted to flag. The first thing is you mentioned the sun. And, humans don't really live that long of a life compared with the existence of the solar system. So when the Earth or the solar system or the sun goes through different cycles, we're really not as aware of them. So what they've done with the climate change, global warming hoax, if you will, is they've gotten us to believe that, first of all, it's our fault for breathing. It's our fault for having too many kids. And it has nothing to do with the sun. Even if the sun can help produce vitamin D, it can help actually prevent and cure certain forms of cancer. We spoke to cancer experts about this on the program before. And what it really seems like to me, Jim, is the way that they target humanity and they target nature, even though they claim to want to help humans and they want to sustain the environment, it really seems to me as if this is a form of dehumanization. What do you think about that?
I think that's absolutely right. And again, it is a hoax. Not that there's not climate changing going on, because it is, but because they're trying to blame it on the human population. And again, this gets back to the corporate owners who are trying to kill us. They, some of them know better, but most of them truly bought into the idea that there's just the basic problem in the world is overpopulation, and that we need to decrease the human population. Well, I'm telling you, I think that whole argument is specious. I don't think it's correct, and here's why. Right now in Hong Kong, if you picture Hong Kong, it's on a series of islands, and it's got huge, big, tall apartment buildings and condominiums. The average living space in Hong Kong today is 1,700 square feet. Now, that's a pretty good size apartment. I used to live in apartments as a young man, and I guarantee you I never lived in anything that had that much space in it. But anyway, so at 1,700 square feet of living space, the entire population of the world, 7.5 billion of us, could live comfortably enough just in the state of Texas. Okay? Now, don't come rushing here, okay, because we don't really want to do that. But my point is, as you can see, and if you wanted to spread out, everybody could probably have an acre, and the whole world population could live just in Australia, okay? So it's not truly an overpopulation problem. It is a population concentration problem. Everybody's crammed into these cities, and I could perfectly well see that with the technology we have today, we could all spread out. Everybody could have a little nice place to live, have high-speed electric or gravitic, magnetic high-speed trains that could take you to the shopping areas and to the entertainment areas. China has 10 or 12 of those modern, sleek, high-speed rail lines. Japan, I think, has about 8 or 9. How many have we got here in the great technologically advanced United States? One. Runs from Boston to Washington, I believe.
We can't even keep our roads together and our streets together.
That's true. In fact, in researching for population control, when I was looking and thinking about all the money that we're blowing on fighting in the Middle East, in places we don't even have any business being there, and all the money that we're spending on defense, I noticed that the American Civil Engineers Society has given the infrastructure in the United States a grade of D+. We're just a couple of steps above a failure.
Barely passed.
Yeah. And so, we could be spending our money on so many good things. We could have a paradise on earth right here if we just get these sociopaths and psychopaths that are running the show out of the way.
Well, Jim, I want to take a break here in a second, but before we do that, I have one other question for you that will expand on a lot of the different books that you've written, actually, not just population control, but specifically on that subject. There is another quote from Bertrand Russell that says, gradually, by selective breeding, the congenial differences between rulers and ruled will increase until they become almost a different species. A revolt of the plebs would become as unthinkable as an organized insurrection of sheep against the practice of eating mutton. Now, Jim, do you think, talking about these massive corporations, the psychopaths that you mentioned, it might be hard for some of us to get into the minds of these people. Do you think that there maybe is an extraterrestrial influence involved in this population control agenda working through political world leaders in order to call off certain parts of the population. And to sum all of that up in a very precise question, do you think maybe the Earth has already been invaded by aliens?
Well, now you're talking about my my next to the last book, which is Our Occulted History. If you'll read that, the subtitle is Do the Global Elite Conceal Ancient Aliens? And what I did there was connect these two topics that are heretofore thought not related. One being the idea of ancient astronauts. The popularity of that TV program has shown that more and more people are now aware of the compelling, if not overwhelming, evidence that there were extraterrestrials on this planet thousands of years ago, okay? And then, of course, the more recent topic of the New World Order, that there is a clique of individuals who are at least trying to run the world today. And my working hypothesis was, can the two be connected? And yes, they can. And so it really does, when you realize what they're doing today, this involuntarily vaccinating people, the rise of autism, the rise of death in the culture, the entertainment, the violence being portrayed in the media, just everything linked together. I think you find out it does definitely raise the question. These people who are in charge, they're not operating in the best interest of the human race. So I think it's legitimate to raise the question, as you did, are they even us? And when you connect back through history and show that there is very, very strong evidence that there were these non-humans on the earth in far distant times, I think it's totally possible that some of them have remained here. So, but if they remained here, then let's put ourselves in their position. Let's say you're Charlton Heston and you're on the planet of the apes. Okay, you don't want to be just another ape. You want to run the planet of the apes. But you're just a handful of astronauts, and you were trained for space flight, and you're not an army. And so how do you control a planet with 7 billion apes? Well, you do it through secrecy, deceit. You keep them warring with each other, fighting with each other over anything and everything, tribes against tribes, nations against nations, populations against population, blacks versus whites versus reds versus yellows versus religion versus Christians versus Muslims versus Jews. You keep everybody fighting, homosexuals against heterosexuals, blah, blah, blah. You keep them all fighting so they don't notice that you're really trying to run the planet of the apes. Does that make sense to you, right?
It makes perfect sense. I mean, this fracturing and division of our society and arguing about meaningless, petty things, it's like George Carlin said, so that, they keep you distracted with all of these things so that they can keep going to the bank.
Well, what kills me is here recently they're trying to ban the old battle flag of the Confederacy. It's not even the flag. It's not even the flag of the Confederacy. That's what kills me. It's not the
banning the flag.
It's just a battle flag, and they want to ban. Oh, they're so upset. We got to ban that. That's a symbol of racism and slavery. Well, excuse me. If we're going to start banning symbols of racism and slavery, we need to dump the United States flag, right?
Exactly. And they want to dig up Confederate generals. They want to, erase monuments. It's just absolute insanity. You got people running around Black Lives Matter, funded by people like George Soros. Isn't it all lives matter, Jim?
Yes, absolutely. And then when we had the riots in Baltimore, I just couldn't believe it. Because I'm sitting here watching. Here's black people rioting and burning down black neighborhoods because a black man got killed by several policemen, which included some black officers, that are headed by a black police chief, who's headed by a black mayor, who's in a state whose attorney general is a black person, who's in a country whose the president is a black man. and they blame it on racism. What? Wait a minute.
So it's all funded, manipulated, and organized, I think, all of these different forms of riots.
Exactly. All lives matter, okay? All lives matter.
That's exactly right. Our guest today, Jim Marrs, award-winning journalist and author. His new book is Population Control. His website, jimmarrs.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. I'm Ryan Gable. Our website is thesecretteachings.info, and Jim Marrs' information is linked up there with his biography, website, and links to purchase the new book, Population Control. Jim, we're going to take a quick break, give us all a little bit of a breather, and we'll be back in just a few minutes.
We have a two-party system. The Democratic Party, which is a party of no ideas, and the Republican Party, which is a party of bad ideas. And the way it works is the Republican stands up in Congress and goes, I got a really bad idea. And the Democrat says, and I can make it shittier.
I'll show you politics in America. Here it is, right here. I think the puppet on the right shares my beliefs. I think the puppet on the left is more to my liking. Hey, wait a minute. There's one guy holding up both puppets. Shut up. Go back to bed, America. Your government is in control. Here's Love Connection. Watch this and get fat and stupid. By the way, keep drinking beer, you morons.
Have you been looking for answers? Have you been seeking the truth but can't seem to find it? Late Night in the Midlands has the answers for you. Whether you are interested in the paranormal, aliens and UFOs, alternative health information, or just a little hope and inspiration, we have a show for you. Late Night in the Midlands, The Secret Teachings, Open Eyes, Red Pill Reality Show, Brothers at Arms, and many more shows. All here on the L&M Network for you to listen to at any time that you want. Everything is free to listen to, and though it is not required, we are listener supported, and all donations are deeply appreciated. You will not find shows like these in the mainstream media. Go to latenightinthemidlands.com to listen. The L&M Network, where the truth has no fear.
Because you can deny all you want to, and you can just walk around and live in denial if that's what you want to do. One of the things I always preface my talks with is, hey, don't trust me, okay? I'm not asking for anybody's trust or belief. We've misplaced our trust for far too long. What we have to do today is you have to study and read, research, and look at all sides, and then use that God-given computer up in your head called your brain and figure it out for yourself, and then you don't have to worry about who you trust. You'll know. Howdy, this is Jim Marrs, the New York Times bestselling author of Crossfire, Ruled by Secrecy, Rise of the Fourth Reich, and my latest one, Our Occulted History. And you're listening to The Secret Teachings.
Transmissions will resume. Now try to keep us all down and hope that we will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package like to keep us trapped in greed. Green belts wrapped around our minds, and endless red tape to keep the truth confined.
Welcome back to The Secret Teachings. I am your host, Ryan Gable. Our website, www.thesecretteachings.info. Our guest today, if you're just joining us, is award-winning journalist and author Jim Marrs. His website, jimmarrs.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. His information is also linked up on our website. Jim Marrs has written several books, including Alien Agenda, Ruled by Secrecy, The War on Freedom, and Our Occulted History. In the last segment, we were talking about his newest book, Population Control. And also joining me on the line now is my guest host for this segment, Ira Robinson. Ira, welcome to the program. If you have a question for Jim, go ahead and start shooting.
Well, thank you very much for having me on here, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Jim has to say today. I've always been a big fan of his. I'm a big fan of his work and the fact that he does not bite any bones about coming out and telling the truth about stuff. We need a lot more people like you, Jim, definitely.
Thank you.
So just starting off, I guess, just a big thank you for everything that you've done over the years, the amount of information that you've come out with, especially in regards to the way that things are done in the background. You know, we really are in a lot of trouble, and not only in this country, but in the entire world, by the fact that we are so subjected under this system of control. And people like you that talk about it, that bring the information out, we need a lot more. So just a big thank you from me.
And Jim, if you want to go ahead and anything we didn't touch on in the first segment in relation to population control, you want to go ahead and flag something for us, and we'll get the conversation going.
Okay. Well, one of the things that really bothered me when I looked into how they are controlling and trying to reduce the population is that obviously if you wanted to control people, the best way to do that would be to control their food and water. And now we've already spoken about the water and how they're poisonous, putting all kinds of things in the water and trying to gain total control over the water. But what I also found is the same thing with food. There are 10 giant multinational corporations that now control the vast majority of the Western world's food. And some of these we all know about, of course, such as Nestle, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, General Mills, Kellogg's, Mars. But then there's some like Mondelez and Associated British Foods, Daytona, and Unilever that we don't hear that much about, but they control the food supply in Europe and in the UK. So here's 10 corporations with interconnected ownership. Who are pretty much in control of our food supply. Now, to me, that's kind of worrisome.
Yeah, we have 10 corporations, and you have companies like Monsanto and Syngenta that not only have they engineered, through a company called Epicide, actually sold the patent to Monsanto, they've engineered antibodies that attack sperm cells into corn. So you have the depopulation aspect there, the population control aspect there, but also the patenting of life and the patenting of these crops, I think, Jim, is another way to get control of the food supply by shutting down small farmers.
Absolutely. And, by the way, and I covered this in my book, Population Control, over the past couple of decades, the sperm count of males across the world has been steadily declining, okay?
Absolutely, yes.
So, yeah, you're aware of that. Now, here's another thing, too. Not only is the GMO crops very, very questionable, in fact, several countries have already banned them outright, and most of the other countries at least demand labeling. You have to say if your crops are GMO or not. Here in the United States, the corporations are dominant, and they have spent millions and millions of dollars to prevent even the labeling of GMOs. And yet Monsanto, who, of course, is one of the leaders in the genetically modified organism technology, is also the leader in the leading herbicide, which is Monsanto's Roundup. Now, in Monsanto's Roundup herbicide, we find the major ingredient is called glyphosate. All right, and glyphosate has now been determined that they have found a consistent correlation between the rise of Roundup on soy, corn, wheat products with the rising rates of autism. In fact, Dr. Stephanie Senna, a senior MIT research scientist, says that at today's rate, get this, by 2025, 1 in every 2 children will be autistic.
Absolutely. I'm a big on. You're hitting a big passion point for me there, Jim. My son is autistic. He severely autistic due to damage from vaccines, and there's nobody that can even counter me with that one. You know, when you see your child go through it moment to moment, you know what the cause is. You know what it was derived from. You know, so the people that try to claim, you know, that wasn't it. It's like no. You don't know until you've gone through it yourself.
Well, I can
what it is, you know.
I can think of so many examples of where you know, we're expected to trust and believe the experts. Okay.
Yes.
The doctors, the guys
They've got their
MD after his
PhDs.
name, our PhD. We got to listen to them, and yet you go all the way back. Back in the 1600s, there was a British doctor who was very concerned about a problem at that time, which was so many of the British sailors were dying from scurvy, okay? And he finally decided that he thought it was probably a vitamin deficiency. But no, all the other doctors, all the prominent experts said, no, that's not right. And they continued to look for this germ because scurvy. And finally, it was like 100 years later that finally in the 1700s, the British doctors finally came around and agreed that it was probably a vitamin deficiency, so they started carrying lemons and limes on their ship. This is where the term limey comes from, okay? If you're a British seaman, you were a limey because you would suck on these limes, and sure enough, that cleared up the scurvy. Nobody dies of scurvy anymore. Now, that's one example. Another example is in my own lifetime. I can remember when doctors and experts and scientists were on TV saying, smoke Camel cigarettes. They're good for you.
Yes.
Oh, right?
Yeah.
So just because some paid-off expert tells you, well, this is okay, this is not harmful, you don't necessarily need to listen to it.
We've seen that recently with Coca-Cola being busted paying quote-unquote health professionals to say that Coca-Cola is a healthy snack.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Then, of course, there's the new mental condition called, have you heard of orthorexia nervosa, Jim?
I can't even say it.
Well, you might have it if you've ever eaten organic food.
Yep. Orthorexia nervosa is the new disorder that they have, claiming that if you are a person who obsessively seeks out healthy food or healthy ways of eating, then you might have what's called orthorexia nervosa.
Yep, it's
and I'll bet you they got a pill for that.
They do indeed. They're working on it. I'm telling you.
I think
if the pill doesn't work, they'll go back to trepanning.
Yep, trepanning.
Punch a hole in your skull.
You got it. You got it. I think that's kind of like the basis of medicine at this point, still, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm telling you, at some time in the future, they're going to look back at chemotherapy and go, oh my God, they really did that to people.
I totally believe so, absolutely. When you were talking about autism and the fact that by 2025 they're estimating that 1 in 2 are going to be autistic, one thing that I talk about whenever that statistic gets mentioned is the fact that when you really get down and think about it, that means that half of the population of this planet in the future is going to be reliant upon the other half, reliant upon the good graces of the other half. Are we raising our children in the methods or in the knowledge that one day they're going to have to take care of this other half of the population? Are we raising them to have any kind of compassion for those kind of people? You know, that's one thing that is big with me, that I don't see children being raised with that. So what are we going to see in the future when it comes to how these other people are going to be taken care of? I think it's going to be a nightmare situation, and that right there is where population control really is at the forefront of things, I think.
I think you're right, and I think it will be a nightmare situation, and I think we'll see that the young people today who do not become autistic are going to be raised in a culture that values zombie movies and the zombie TV shows, and they will look upon the people who they should be taking care of as zombies, and the solution is the old double tap in the head.
Yeah, I used to work in a facility for the mentally retarded, you know, those who for years were caught up in the system, become wards of the state. They were, profoundly retarded, that kind of thing. And I know that most of those places at this point in time, they're shut down. A lot of these institutions are shut down. A lot of the people go into group home situations now. But I really do have this worry or this concern that something like that is going to actually come about again just because of this rising rate of autism.
Yeah, I'm afraid you're right. And the thing is, though, see, if you carry this idea of genetics and the whole role of trying to improve the human race and the eugenics movement, which actually started here in the United States. But, you know, it was picked up in the 30s in Germany. And the Nazi Party, which came to power in the 30s, decided that eugenics, you know, let's improve the race. And so they carried it to its logical extreme, which is we've got some people here, we got some gypsies, some Jews, we got some people that we think are deficient, and so we need to get rid of them, and so we'll just very efficiently kill them. And so that led to the concentration camps and to the Holocaust, and, you know, and the whole world recoiled and said, wait a minute, you can't just go out and kill innocent people just for your idea of improving the breed. And so that's what's led to today. Now they're doing it quietly and
That's
with
right.
great public relations.
Well,
Here, take your shot. It's good for you. Eat this. It tastes good. It's not nutritious, but it tastes good. Keep eating this.
Well, Jim,
you know,
look
and
what
then
look what they did in Nazi Germany too, and you can see this as an underlying agenda all over the world. In 1933, I think it was, Hitler and the Nazi Party, they passed the Sterilization Act, where they would use they actually used vaccinations, the T4 vaccine program, to sterilize people, and they used to inject phenyl acid into the heart to kill people. Now, that was the same year that British Columbia passed their Sterilization Act to eradicate the native population there. It was the same year that in the United States, as you mentioned, and I've read in your books, the eugenics movement started here. We actually had these different programs in California to eradicate certain people, political dissidents, people that were considered mentally ill, wards of the state and whatnot. And we had the Tuskegee experiment here in 1933, the experimentation on blacks. I mean, all of this ties in with what you're saying, and in terms of, say, Planned Parenthood, the Birth Control Society, major funders, the Rockefellers, the Harrimans, Margaret Sanger, the public founder. You're right. Now it's done under the guise of protection, providing necessary, elements to the society, to women, and people are just seeming to be okay with it while they chant Black Lives Matter. At the same time that's going on, you have Planned Parenthood killing 2-to-1 blacks over any other racial group.
Yeah, that's true. And yet, you know, you can hardly say anything about it. In fact, here's how insidious it is. Just last year, 2014, UNICEF and the World Health Organization injected 2 million Kenyan women with a vaccine that was found to have been laced with a sterilization chemical.
Absolutely,
so this is nothing new, and it's just a continuing thing. And when you were mentioning the sterilization laws in Nazi Germany, we had them here in the United States as well. I'm looking at a graph from 1935 that showed most states. I'm looking at exceptions are Illinois, Pennsylvania, Texas, thank God. But those were the exceptions. Most of the other states had sterilization laws on the book. Okay?
Yes.
If you didn't fit into their concept of skin color or bone structure or mental capacity, then, you know, you could be forcibly sterilized.
The mental capacity was a big one, definitely. Like I said, I used to work in one of the facilities where the results of all of those sterilization laws actually were pooled together. I worked there for a number of years, and it was a horror show, absolutely horror show. I could not stand to work there any longer just because of the seeing the effects of everything that had gone on. I just couldn't take it anymore, you know. It was just a horror show again, like I said. I also come from a background, I'm Native American, and so I come from this background of also having an understanding of what's happened to my own folks, you know, in history. Even back in the 1930s, 1940s, 1920s, during that era, one of the big things was to pull kids off of the different reservations and put them into being wards of the state, and then given into like things like the Catholic charities or Catholic orphanages, and they would be put in there and have the Indian, the savage, beaten out of them. They'd be forced into sterilization. Many of the women that were put into there, they came out of it having had either their tubal ligations or complete hysterectomies. And would never give permission about it, and they wouldn't even have a clue. This was done when they were young children, so they wouldn't have even been able to give permission for something like that to occur.
That's true, and it wasn't. That also happened in Australia. It also happened in Canada.
Yeah.
And that was within living memory, okay? But
Yes.
now here's one right up till today. There's a fellow named John Holdren, okay? John P. Holdren, a scientist who back some years ago participated in a book called Eco Science, okay? And in there he writes, many of my colleagues feel that some sort of compulsory birth regulation would be necessary to achieve such control over population growth. One plan often mentioned involves the addition of temporary sterilants to water supplies or staple food. Doses of the antidote would be carefully rationed by the government to produce the desired population size. Now, you might laugh off John Holdren, except today he sits at the right hand of President Obama as his science
That's
advisor.
right.
Yes,
That's
absolutely.
Science advisor.
And they're also trying to do the same thing in New Zealand to make all teenage girls sterile, temporarily sterile, like through chemical means, and then allow them later, if they choose to want to get pregnant later, they would give them the quote-unquote antidote to be able to be fertile again.
There's a couple of things here I want to flag because you're all hitting on a lot of topics that I had written down some questions I wanted to ask Jim. We can even tie this back in with the beginning of this segment and food. You look at people like Bill Gates, and he owns a large number of shares in Monsanto, for example. Bill Gates and Microsoft, they have pumped, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, millions, perhaps billions of dollars into vaccination programs, specifically targeting Africans. I know the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation went to Africa a couple of years ago, gave out vaccinations, and over 48,000 kids were paralyzed as a result of those vaccines. Now they've come out with a microchip which they want to stick into women to actually release hormones and act as a form of birth control, but it would be a form of remote-controlled birth control in terms of an RFID chip. So, Jim, in looking at those facts, a global elitist eugenicist like a Bill Gates, I mean, he's one of the big names that we hear about, and obviously I don't think getting into names really matters that much, but just an example of how somebody, almost a technocrat in a sense, who has all of these interests in food and vaccinations and technology, and this is at the top of that corporate pyramid, dictating this this agenda down to the lower echelons and orchestrating all of this. I mean, these people have their hands in absolutely every form of industry, food, water, everything that you can imagine. It's incredible to me how we can still then look at people like this, or look at people like the head of Apple who passed away, and look at them as heroes. That's the thing that really bothers me, is we look at these people as heroes, and then real patriots, real heroes that stand up and try to tell the truth, we kill them, we laugh at them, we politically assassinate them, and we write them off as villains.
You're absolutely correct. That's exactly right. Well, let me quote General Maxwell Taylor, okay? Now, Maxwell Taylor was our ambassador to Vietnam, was pretty well running the Vietnam War there for a long time, and then became chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, okay? And back years ago in the 70s, he wrote and said that in the next century, well, that means now, it will be necessary to reduce the world's population, mostly in third world countries, using methods such as disease, starvation, regional wars. Africa, Middle East, isn't that what's happening? Starvation, disease, regional wars.
Do you think Africa is a testing ground?
I think they are reducing, there's going to come a time 50, 100 years from now where they're going to have to send Livingston and Stanley back over to Africa to re-explore that continent, because they are reducing the African population. And I know this is true because some years ago I talked to a fellow who worked for our military, and his job was to monitor the satellites that were looking at all various things. And he said in Africa, they had these infrared satellites that could determine population through heat, right? And he said the big cities were one size, and that during his stay in the military, they just kept dwindling. Okay, they're getting less and less, so they're depopulating Africa. This is what's happening.
Absolutely.
Well, I know for one one group that is constantly targeted over there in Africa, like all of Africa, are the farmers. Anybody that's a farmer, they get targeted, and so they're killing off the ones who are feeding them. So, that right there shows when you have that kind of basis going on, when they are, again, targeting who's providing the food. Exactly. That right there is the easiest or quickest way of population control.
It's the same thing with India and a lot of the farmer suicides because of the massive debt.
Hundreds of thousands of suicides in India because they were sold products by Monsanto, and they told them it was going to increase their production, and instead it decreased production, and a lot of them are going out of business and committed suicide.
That's right.
They couldn't afford their farms. Well, now listen, guys, this is actually, you're getting to hear what I consider the greatest proof, not only of conspiracy, but of probably the greatest conspiracy that's taking place in the world today, and that is simply this. I think both of you guys would agree with me when I say that we have the technology available today, right off the shelf, not some prototype, but I mean available technology to feed, clothe, house, and give basic medical treatment to every single living person on this planet. Would you disagree with me?
I would not in any way, especially when you get into the idea of aquaponics, tiny houses, that kind of thing. They're all so easily available.
So we have the technological means to feed, clothe, house, and take care of everyone on this whole planet. And yet, while we're sitting here talking, while your listeners are out there listening, we don't like to think about it, but in the back of our mind, we know that right now there are thousands, perhaps millions of children starving to death on this planet right now.
No need for it.
Right this minute. Why is that? We have the means to prevent that. It's not happening. Why is that? And I'll tell you, because once you get past some of the facile rationalization, such as, well, it takes money and it takes political power and it takes transportation, and no, forget that. It's that way because somewhere somebody wants it that way. Okay,
I see it.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be that way, right?
Exactly. I see it almost as an occultic type of a situation where there almost seems to be kind of dark entities that are behind all of this, saying, "Hey, we'd like to do this as a way of sacrifice." I honestly can't not see it that way.
Well, I think that ties in. You and I talked about this last week, Ira. Jim, tell me what your thoughts are about this. We saw that Pepsi was putting aborted fetal cells, diploid cells, into the flavoring of their products, and so were other companies. And then we come out with we find out all this Planned Parenthood stuff with the videos and the selling off of body parts, taking babies, letting them live after sometimes letting them be born, letting them live, and then extracting the organs and selling them. And we're seeing the brain cells of these children now being put into rats. And we see all of this agenda of transhumanism. We've seen the dehumanization, the altering through genetics of not only our food, we've seen the geoengineering of the environment, the modification genetically of the human race. We've got, in some places like the UK, they've got genetic experiments where they're having 3 parents to the same child. I think this is all a lot about dehumanization, but it also ties into transhumanism, and I think it ties into creating, like that Bertrand Russell quote I read you earlier, Jim, kind of a massive separation between the ruled and the rulers, so that we are inferior, they are superior, almost creating a breakaway civilization. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's absolutely true. Yes, I do. In fact, I was well aware and was pretty much in agreement with the idea of a breakaway civilization before they ever coined that term. Here's the big problem. You go back and you look at the kings and queens through history, and generally you see this same pattern. you see one guy rise up above the others in some country, nation, tribe, and he's a strong and intelligent and smart leader, and so before long he becomes king, okay? Well, then he is the king, he's the royal bloodline, so he passes it down to his son, who may or may not be quite as capable as he is. But then they continue to interbreed, and by the time it gets to his grandson and his great-grandson, sometimes they are dribbling idiots. But they're still in charge because they're of the royal bloodline.
I think you've described the Bush family.
You see this over and over again. And I think this is what we're going to be facing. These people who think, well, I'm smart and I should be in charge and I'll run the world, they're going to pass it on to somebody else. And when you get 2 and 3 stages down the line, how do we know we're going to get anybody who's thoughtful at all? We may end up like that movie Idiocracy.
Oh, absolutely. I can see it coming. And one of the issues, too, is that we as human beings, we do fall into that category of having a herd mentality kind of situation. So when somebody does rise to power, the large amount of the population responds in saying, okay, we'll obey with whatever you say. Just, give us our entertainment, give us our food, and we'll follow whatever it is that you have to say.
Right. And guys, we've only got about 10 to 15 minutes left here. We're running out of time. So, Jim, I wanted to flag one more question for you and then see if you had anything else you'd like to add and get some final words from you on today's program. Again, we are speaking to Jim Marrs, the award-winning journalist and author. He's the author of the new book, Population Control, and you can get a copy of that at his website, jimmarrs.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. It's also linked up at thesecretteachings.info, our website. So, Jim, Ira touched on a subject a few minutes ago. He said that these natives had the Indian beaten out of them. And in my new book, The Persistent Illusion, I covered a lot. Before I even knew you had written a new book, I covered a lot of these same subjects. I mean, that's the underlying theme of my new book. And I wrote in my new book about the manipulation and the altering of language through text messages and through political correctness. Now, the reason a lot of these natives had the Indian beaten out of them was for speaking their own language. Now, what I've seen, Jim, just recently, whether it's political correctness in the political realm or it's the New Hampshire University language-free bias-free language guide that says you can't say the word American anymore. It's offensive. You can't say obese. You can't say mother. You can't say father. CBS News reported in New York that New York State is trying to remove certain words such as warfare, bloodshed, terrorism, slavery from state tests and schools. I see that plus this integration of technology and the elimination of people's ability to communicate through social networking, social media, the abbreviation of words and emojis as a form of genocide. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I totally agree. It's as the philosopher once said, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. And that's exactly what's going on right now. That's why in the United States today, I see, being a student of Hitler and the Third Reich, I see the events and taking place in the United States today is we are running along that very same path, okay? And this is why, first you have to understand the formula that these ruling elites are using, and it goes back to the dialectic of George Hegel, a German philosopher who basically was simply trying to put in a formula human interaction. And it's pretty simple. Let's say you want to go see one movie and your wife wants to go see another movie. Okay, well, there's a problem. The problem is you want to see one and she wants to see something else. The reaction is that, well, she says, I don't want to see the one you want to see. So then you all work together and you decide, okay, well, we'll go see movie C that we can both agree to, and that's resolution, and or as the Hegelian dialectic calls it, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis, problem, reaction, solution. But what's happened is that these ruling elites long ago figured out, well, wait a minute, why wait around for the problem? We'll create the problem, okay? So they create the problem and then offer these draconian solutions, more laws, stronger laws, And then everybody goes, no, wait a minute. So then they'll water it down a little bit, and they reach synthesis, and they go, okay, well, we'll do it this way. And everybody goes, well, okay, it's not as bad as what you first proposed. And then by that method, they just keep inching forward and moving forward towards their ultimate goal.
Slow desensitization.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with using words and all like that. And for example, we mentioned earlier, this hoorah over the Confederate battle flag. Okay, well, if they're successful with that, you better believe they're going to move on, and pretty soon we're going to be told that the cross is a hate sign. Okay, and they're going to try to wipe out Christianity. And don't think they won't, because they're working hard at it.
I think it's
absolutely,
it's all genocidal in nature by eliminating
Yes.
people's history and culture. I mean, did you see what they're doing in Colorado, Jim, where the state college board took away the courses that talked about the American Revolution, and instead, just last week or the week before last, they have a new course for AP classes where you are taught about American exceptionalism and not negative history.
Yeah, right. Okay, that would produce a whole new crop of little Nazis, won't it?
It sure will,
Yes, it
indeed.
will.
Another thing that they're now trying to say is a hate is the POW MIA flag. That's now the new symbol of racist hatred that they're trying to bring down. It's one thing after the other. It's the derivative or the new way of propaganda. I'm a big student as far as propaganda goes. Like you mentioned there, the Nazi regime, the Third Reich. All of this is based in propaganda. We see this happening today, where what we have in this country is Nazi Germany kind of squared or duplicated, but then instead of coming out flat out trying to destroy people or kill people or anything like that, like what happened in the Third Reich, they're doing it in more subtle ways. They learned that, okay, people are going to respond in the negative if we do things in a violent way, so let's do things in a subtle way.
If we just announce we're killing people, there'll be some resistance to that. By the way,
if
you ever thought about this, the Nazis got that group mentality, that herd mentality going by having large masses of people get in those rallies, and they'd have all the swastika flags flying and the bands playing, and everybody going, Sieg Heil, Sieg Heil, and got everybody in that mass hysteria. And today, we don't have those massive political rallies, but, oops, wait a minute, we do have the NFL, and we do have the Super Bowl, and we have masses of people going, yeah.
Bread and circuses.
Herd mentality going,
Absolutely.
And yay, America, yay, America. We have jets flying over and flags
Well,
flying.
remember that, Jim, when they supposedly got Osama bin Laden? It was all people in front of the White House, USA #1, kill them all, kill them all. I mean, that's the kind of mentality that Americans have nowadays. It's very sad.
Well, and one thing that we see, too, is that one new thing that they are doing is they are actually hiring people to come in and start the crowds off. So they actually are called rent-a-crowds, where you can rent a group of people to come in and actually start fomenting whatever it is that you want to do. So if you want people to respond, USA, then they'll start chanting USA, and they know, again, that herd mentality, people are going to start just joining in and chiming in.
It reminds
just because it's the energy of the area.
Reminds me of Men in Black. A person is smart, but people are dumb.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Never underestimate the power of a crowd, a mob. This is, by the way, this gets a little more philosophical, but it's also true, and I think you guys will understand and agree with me. We keep, you never hear a national politician anymore refer to the republic. We don't have a republic anymore. We're the empire, okay? Which, by the way, the Third Reich means empire. All right, and so we're the Fourth Reich. We're the new empire, and that's because all we can hear about is democracy. We got to go to the Middle East to protect democracy and to bring them democracy. Well, wait a minute. What exactly is democracy? Well, its definition is rule by the majority, which sounds okay on the surface, but wait a minute. If you stop and think, the classic example of democracy in action is a lynch mob.
Yep.
Okay?
That's right.
And we don't want that, and that's not what we were even given by our founding fathers. We were given a Democratic Republic. And what's the difference? Well, in the Democratic Republic, the majority says hang him, but you can't just hang him. You have to then go through a series of laws and checks and balances. He gets legal representation. He gets to face his accusers and the evidence. He gets a trial by his peers, okay? And then if he's found guilty and maybe even gets an appeal and that's turned down, then you can hang him, okay? That's a Democratic Republic, and we're losing that. We are now the right.
Absolutely, through the NDAA, we've already lost it.
Yeah, the president now can decide that you're a enemy combatant and throw you in prison and throw the key away, and you have no recourse. There's no habeas corpus. You can't have an attorney, you know. And if you think that sounds ridiculous, it's exactly what we have. That's done. That's a done deal.
Well, Jim, let me ask you then, with that being said, coming up in the last few minutes here, getting your final thoughts, your final words on the book Population Control and the conversation we've been having, how do we get out of this? Is it just educating the people, or are there other things we need to do?
Well, that would be step one. Yes, and the main thing is to understand that this has gotten past politics and past some kind of philosophical discussions. We are basically now talking about self-defense. So anyone listening, if you care about the future and the safety and the health of your family and your loved ones, then number one, start educating yourself. You can start with my book, Population Control, How Corporate Owners Are Killing Us, and then go on from there, study out those issues, find out for yourself what's true, what's not, and then figure out for yourself what you can do about it. There are things we can be done. For one thing, guys, this may surprise you, but on reflection, I'm not sure but what this corporatism that we find ourselves under might not be that bad, because at least if we're under some sort of socialism, you've got a government bureaucrat making the decisions. There's no leverage over him or her. They can just do whatever they want to do, make it a government edict, a law, a policy, okay? But corporatism, hey, they do respond to the bottom line. And, for example, if everyone understood the dangers of aspartame, then they'd quit buying diet drinks and diet food with aspartame in it. And as soon as everybody quit buying it, then the corporations would quit making it. They'd go to something else.
I think we've seen that with fast food now, Jim, how these companies are having to change their image, change their menus. McDonald's installing wood floors, fireplaces, and chandeliers as if that changes the food. But these companies are having to respond this way because the consumers don't buy it. But they are responding.
They are responding.
And then that shows you where the real power lies in the people and us making these decisions and voting with our dollar.
Exactly. That's it, exactly. And I'll tell you something else I noticed that's working is that I live in a rural area, and years ago when I first moved here, we'd go to a little town nearby, and we'd go to 6 different shops. We'd go to the grocery store and the cleaners and the drug store and the farm and ranch store and the dry goods store, and now you go to Walmart because all those are out of business, right? And all you got's Walmart. But even at Walmart, where, with all of its evils, that could be a whole show right there. I noticed that now more and more they're offering organic foods, okay? Where it used to be just maybe one little, down at the end of one little shelf is one little can or box or something that says organic. Now there's whole aisles of it. So, see, people are demanding that, and they're getting that. Although we need to look at that very hard, because what I'm finding out in the report in my book, Population Control, is that even when it says organic, there's some huge question marks there.
Well, a lot of the added ingredients, organic doesn't even mean that the entire product is organic. It just means about 70% is organic.
Right. Exactly. For example, for organic beef, you have to have, free range. Well, according to the federal government, though, that means that the cows have to have access to a range or to an open field. But access and being there is two different things.
You got it. Yes,
that's
they
right.
could be all locked into a little pen, but they can look out and see the access.
Yeah, they had one little grain of rice or grain of wheat growing over the fence, and so they were able to eat it. Eat the end of it there. That was access.
Right. I mean,
so that almost counts as organic.
I think so many of these labels are so deceptive, especially the word natural that they throw in everything. And as a matter of fact, that Monsanto bill that's being passed right now, the Accurate Food, was it the food, I can't even remember the name of it, the Accurate and Safe Food.
I just call it the Dark Act.
Yeah.
Dark Act.
Well,
Dark Act. So you don't know what's in your food.
Exactly. So how accurate is it really? But you're exactly right. The organic labels, the natural labels, in and of themselves, it's really these corporations that are making a change. They're responding to the people, but they're doing it at the least cost to themselves, and they're able to still manipulate people who are somewhat ignorant, even being aware of organic food, somewhat ignorant of the full range of additives to that food, be it aspartame or high fructose corn syrup. People just need to, first of all, be educated. Jim, do you have anything else that you would like to add, comments on anything maybe you didn't say?
What we're talking about here is the term fascism, okay, which was based on Benito Mussolini, the Italian war dictator, and his black-shirted fascistas, who represented central authority. But he himself said that fascism is really not the correct term. A more correct term is corporatism, okay, ruled by the corporations. And what's happened, guys, very simply, is that in fascist Italy and Nazi Germany during the 30s, the government took control over the corporations, and it was that blending of state and corporate power that's the very definition of fascism. Well, here in modern America, the corporations have taken control of the state, but the end result's the same, fascism. And we need to be aware of that, and we need to somehow or another break loose and cut the controlling strings from these corporations that are running the government and telling the government how to do things and what regulations to set. The whole idea of government was to be a referee, okay, to make sure that the corporations act responsibly and that they are fair with each other and with the public, and instead now the government is simply another branch of the corporations.
That's right, and we need to take responsibility for our actions and stop delegating that authority to some third party, be it a government or religious institution.
No joke. All my life I've heard people say, well, let Washington take care of it. And by God, they have, and it's not a pretty picture.
It is not in any way.
Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Your website is jimmars.com. That's JIMMARRS.com. You've got a whole bunch of books out there, from Alien Agenda to Rule by Secrecy to Our Occulted History, and the new book, Population Control. I'm sure listeners can get that on the website as well as other places that books are sold, correct?
That's it. Amazon, any bookstore. It's out there. It's a major book from a major publisher.
Absolutely. Check it out. Population Control. I can't wait to get my copy and read through it. I'm sure I know a lot about what's already in that book, but I'm sure I'll learn a lot as well. Ira, thanks for joining me here for this this final segment with Jim. We'll talk to you later as well. Jim, I, again, really appreciate it, and if you could stay with us just for one moment so we could talk off air. Other than that, again, thank you so much, and everybody out there will be back in just a few minutes with more Secret Teachings. Stay tuned.
People who question the official version of events are usually labeled with the term conspiracy theorist, since this term is associated with paranoia and insanity. The person's questions are immediately dismissed as the rantings of someone who has gone mad, and using the ad hominem argument by immediately attacking the person rather than addressing their question, no matter how seemingly insane it may at first sound, a preconceived, often repeated storyline is allowed to exist and masquerade as absolute truth. If you train the masses to laugh at what they don't understand and to dismiss it as nonsense, then you have essentially eliminated free thought and critical thinking with little to no physical force. By setting the standards for what is possible or not, by what is apparently right or wrong, you are able to engineer an entire group of people and thus influence their choices and lifestyles to fit the corporate, political, socio-economic agenda of the real men behind the curtain. This has been An Alternative Fact, brought to you by The Secret Teachings.
Howdy, this is Jim Marrs, the New York Times bestselling author of Crossfire, Rule by Secrecy, Rise of the Fourth Reich, and my latest one, Our Occulted History. And you're listening to The Secret Teachings.
You are listening to The Secret Teachings with host Ryan Gable.
Let it be known that British liberties are not the grants of princes or parliaments. Many of our rights are inherent and essential, agreed on as maxims and established as preliminaries even before Parliament existed. We have a right to them, derived from our Maker. Our forefathers have earned and bought liberty for us at the expense of their ease, their estates, their pleasures, and their blood. Liberty is not built on the doctrine that a few nobles have a right to inherit the earth. No! It stands on this principle that the meanest and lowest of the people are, by the unalterable, indefeasible laws of God and nature, as well entitled to the benefit of the air to breathe, light to see, food to eat, and clothes to wear as the nobles or the king. That is liberty, and liberty will reign in America.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. You are listening to The Secret Teachings. Welcome back to The Secret Teachings. I am your host, Ryan Gable. Our website is www.thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info. If you go to the website, at the very top of the page, you will find a link to our show archive with all of our past episodes. You can click any episode that is listed there and download it or stream it for free. You do not have to sign up or pay any money for the archive. It is absolutely free, always has been, and hopefully always will be at thesecretteachings.info. On the website, you will also find a link to other places the show airs other than the L&M radio network, such as Planet Paranormal. Our archive is also available through their website. On our website, the last thing I will tell you about today is the Top News tab, and the Top News tab will have a list of news articles we discuss on every program, for the most part, including today. I have some news that I'd like to get to in this segment for the final segment, or final two segments of the program today. We've got news on NSA surveillance. We have news on mind control, child mind control through Disney. That's always a very interesting subject. We also have Planned Parenthood news, STEM Express, cutting ties with Planned Parenthood, supposedly, and the hijacking of certain cars. And that's interesting because I said that was possible over 2 years, coming up on 3 years ago. And I was told I was crazy, and yet here we are with cars pretty easily being hacked with just simple applications on a smartphone. Being able to hack into them through their internet provider address, through their IP address. So we'll get to all of that in a second. I just wanted to let you know that if you missed the previous 2 hours of today's program, you missed a really good show. This, I guess you could call it the fifth week of sustainable development. We talked to Jim Marrs, award-winning journalist and author. His website is jimmarrs.com. He has a new book out called Population Control. We talked all about the book, Population Control. We talked a lot about eugenics. We talked about the consolidation through the Agenda 21 program, Agenda of the 21st Century, what we call sustainable development out of the United Nations and wildlife conservation. What all of this is being used for, the guise of the green movement, the smart technology, that has so many different ramifications, not just of privacy, not just health hazards with the smart devices, the microwave radiation coming off of smart meters and microbursts, the smart phones, the radiation coming off of them. These geniuses chose the microwave spectrum to transmit this data. which, again, is part of an agenda, the reason that it was chosen for cellular technology. Some of these smart telephone posts that they try to hide as cactuses, or cacti rather, as water towers, as in some cases you see them disguised as trees. All of this has blanketed our world in an ocean of electromagnetic radiation. And so much of this electromagnetic radiation bounces off the upper atmosphere, and it creates a bubble here on Earth. It has essentially created an actual matrix on this planet. And for most of you out there who listen to the show and who are aware of the subjects that we talk about here, and I fall into this category too, so I completely understand it. I'm not addressing anybody in particular. I fall into this category. It's hard to get away from the technology. Admittedly, if I didn't do the program, I probably would not have an iPad or a tablet of any kind. I probably wouldn't even have a computer. Maybe a much cheaper, simpler computer than the computer I need to run the radio program through, but I probably wouldn't even have a computer. However, I would probably be watching television a lot of the time. I guess it's a give and take, because the more I do radio, the less I watch anything on television. I don't actually watch television broadcasts, but I have a lot of old DVDs of movies and television shows, so I'll watch those. Or I'll watch Netflix occasionally. It's a documentary, or I'll watch a sitcom, something like that. So I can sit back and try to relax and try not to be so stressed out, not even about the information that we cover, but just about compiling it so it comes together in a very concise, and I can provide that information to you. I can present it in a very concise and informative way. And I know from a lot of the emails we've been getting recently that I've obviously been able to do that. I actually had a couple of emails here before we get to the news that I wanted to go through, and thank you, the listeners, for sending them to us. I got one from Mondi Green, who was commenting on I guess you could say it's my first UFO sighting, unidentified flying object. And when I say my first UFO sighting, I've seen other objects, which they were UFOs for about 2 to 3 minutes, maybe 30 seconds, and then I was able to identify them. The object that I saw a couple of weeks ago, and I talked about it on the program, was a red orb that came out of just over the mountaintops here in Boise, Idaho. Went over top of the city, and I could see it from a distance, but it came over my apartment, and as I ran down, I took some video of it on the balcony, and then I ran downstairs, and as I ran downstairs, it basically stopped, and then at a 90-degree angle, turned and headed away until it disappeared over the treetops, and it vanished after that. I tried to run down the road. I couldn't see it anymore. But Mondi Green sends us an email, and he says that he was at a music festival in Montana, and apparently there was another UFO sighting very similar to the one I saw, where there were red glowing orbs, or he says 3 red faintly glowing orbs. So this has obviously been seen not just here in Boise, Idaho, but in Montana as well, which is not so far from Idaho. And I hope Mondi Green is a guy. I'm assuming it is, because I don't see any other gender specifications here in this email, so apologies if not. But anyway, so that email comes from Mondi Green. We have another email here that I wanted to thank Russell Stewart, who sent me an email about 1984. And if I'm wrong about it, maybe it's a combination. He says that 1984, George Orwell's book, was actually modeled not necessarily after Hitler or Nazi Germany, but after Stalinist Russia. And I've heard that before. I've also heard more specifically it was geared towards Hitler's Germany, specifically because of the Goldstein character, the Jewish connection, and the fact that the Big Brother character had a mustache kind of like a Hitler. That's where I always got my information from. That's where I even actually in high school, we learned that as the baseline of what 1984 was written about. But maybe it also had a little bit to do with Stalin. Stalin had a mustache as well. So maybe it did have something to do with Stalinist Russia, but the same basic concept is true for 1984 with the telescreens, which is our smart televisions today, the rationing of products such as food, energy, lifestyles where people are allowed to live, the constant conflicts and war. That is what our current society is facing today. And you couple that with Eric Blair, George Orwell's mentor and teacher, Aldous Huxley, and Aldous Huxley wrote A Brave New World, a mass-medicated society where people were basically, all children were wards of the state, did not know who their parents were, and were raised in this medicated, conformist type of reality. And it's very similar to the movie Equilibrium as well, where people walked around with basically no emotions, and everybody was just another drone. It's very similar to how our society works today. And all of this political correctness that's killing not just this country and the rest of the world, but this political correctness has acted as a form of cultural genocide. And not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. But here in the U.S., we've seen how New York State has attempted to, and I mentioned this to Jim Marrs, has attempted to eliminate certain words from state tests, such as the word terrorism, bloodshed, warfare, words that can really describe and at least help children understand or explain the world that we live in, but those are slowly being eradicated, along with the programs they have in Colorado now where they no longer wish to teach quote-unquote negative history. Instead, they would rather teach American exceptionalism. That is a news story that is up at thesecretteachings.info under the top news tab. American exceptionalism, a new AP history course to be taught with the elimination of courses about negative history, such as the American Revolution. So you've eliminated a culture by basically eliminating their history. And now this culture that we face or that we have as a society is being bred to be completely incapable of not only thinking for themselves, but taking responsibility for themselves, taking responsibility for their actions. So many people are ready to just say, well, let the government deal with it. Let the police deal with it. I don't need to defend myself. I don't need to take care of myself. The government will give me food. The government will give me clothes. The government will give me housing. The government gives me a phone. Everything the government will do for me. If I'm in trouble, then I'll just call the police. The police will come. They'll take care of the situation. I have no need for a gun or anything to defend myself because I'll rely on somebody else to do that for me. And hey, if you want to, then by all means, you rely on somebody else. But for the rest of us that want to take responsibility for our actions and we want to take responsibility for ourselves, our families, our property, then we need to find ways to take that responsibility, whether that's the purchasing of a gun or making sure that you have a stockpile of food or water, or not even necessarily a large stockpile. I'm not talking about the end of the world. I'm talking about places where, you have hurricanes, like on the Gulf Coast. When I used to live down in Florida, it was at the same time the Department of Homeland Security was telling you that it's a domestic terrorism act. It's an act of domestic terrorism to collect batteries and flashlights and food and water. Is the same time FEMA is coming out in Florida and saying, make sure you get batteries and flashlights and food and water for the next hurricane. But if you do that, then you're a domestic terrorist, you're a domestic extremist, and then they can lock you up, put you in these re-education camps the U.S. Army has, and they can re-educate you to U.S. policy, more, to have a more favorable view, as the document, the Army document said, a more favorable view of U.S. policy. All of this is just a big hoax, and we are so distracted by tic-tac topics. We are so distracted by issues that do not matter whatsoever, whether it's Jenner or whether it's Cecil the Lion. People are so concerned with their little group, with their little label, with their little tags, making sure that they express some form of individuality, with their social media accounts, saying that, yes, all Black Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter. And I think that Planned Parenthood should be able to stay in business because they provide essential services to young women. And the people that scream Black Lives Matter and then they're okay with Planned Parenthood don't realize Planned Parenthood aborts 2-to-1 black children over any other ethnic group. So 2-to-1, that is a pretty large number, especially when millions of blacks are being aborted in New York City is one of the biggest in particular. And that doesn't seem to be a problem at all. Instead, Obama will say we need to worry about African albinos and organ harvesting there, even though Planned Parenthood is on video on video. Melissa Farrell, Dr. Garrett is another one. I think she was head of the Pasadena Planned Parenthood. Melissa Farrell is a director for the Gulf Coast Planned Parenthood. And they're on video talking about the selling of aborted fetal tissue, talking about the selling of body parts, kidneys, livers, lungs, brain cells. I mean, it's on video. It's not dubbed. I mean, some of these videos are 9 hours long. The versions that you might see on YouTube or from the CMP are just cut down into the essentials that should really just create an absolute outrage and revolt against Planned Parenthood, which is a eugenics institution, as we went into with Jim Marrs, and as I actually detailed 2 years ago, almost 3 years now, in my book, The Grand Illusion, I talked about Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, and I talked about how Planned Parenthood is a eugenics agency. It came out of the eugenics movement, or was essentially one of the linchpins that was the foundational pillar of the eugenics movement. As Jim Marrs noted, and as I've said many times myself, I think I actually learned it from reading Jim Marrs' books, the eugenics movement came out of the United States. It didn't come out of Nazi Germany. The Germans just took that and they expanded on it to its logical conclusion, just eradicating everybody that wasn't of a prescribed racial type. And now we see companies, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Coca-Cola, Xerox, and Ford, they cut their ties, essentially, or they cut funding for Planned Parenthood. The federal government still funds Planned Parenthood, though, because the bill to defund Planned Parenthood was shot down under the guise of, first of all, the senators and the congressmen that all looked at it, and the ones that did vote on it, the congressmen that did vote on it, said, they didn't even, or excuse me, not the congressmen, the senators that looked at it, rather, looked at it and said, we didn't actually watch the videos. Well, how can you vote on a bill if you didn't even watch the videos? I mean, it just shows you how insane the Congress and the Senate truly are. It shows you how absolutely ass backwards this entire system really is. I mean, the system with what we're supposed to have checks and balances and rules and regulations and laws, it all sounds good, but the way that it operates is not so good. It's the same thing with the idea of eugenics. It sounds like a good idea, but when you have psychopathic murderers and criminals that are running the operation under the guise of giving women medical care, or Obamacare, giving people free medical care. It's not free. People have to pay for that. And if you don't pay for it, or if you don't choose to sign up for it, you'll get fined for basically for the amount that you would have paid for it had you not refused to, because maybe you didn't have the money to pay for it. And I understand it might help some people. Planned Parenthood might help some people, but that is no justification for the other actions that this agency takes or that this group takes. Just because Planned Parenthood might help a couple mothers does not in any way account for the endless numbers of abortions and the selling of these children without the consent of the parents, without the consent of the mother, at the minimal or the maximum, however you look at it. It's incredible to me how we can have this on video, companies pull support, even STEM Express now. This is coming out. STEM Express, which was working with Planned Parenthood and purchasing some of the aborted fetal parts, has now basically cut ties with Planned Parenthood. My question to you, ladies and gentlemen, and for all the senators out there, or congressmen, senators, state representatives, anybody that looks at this and says, I don't think this is true. I think it's all a conspiracy. I think it's all a hoax. Everybody look over there. Somebody killed a lion. Or, oh, no, look over there. The African albinos, the organ harvesting. That does go on, but we're talking about what's happening here in America right now with Planned Parenthood. Don't try to distract us with other topics, which is even more amazing is the fact that they're talking about African albinos and organ harvesting, and they're distracting away from harvesting of children's organs in the United States with something happening in Africa, as if they care about Africa any other time. As far as I'm concerned, these people see Africa as a testing ground for vaccines, for biological agents. They've eradicated so large a portion of the African population. Just look at Libya. It's in Africa. It's the first place Obama authorized to bomb when he got into office. It's an African country in the continent of Africa. And yet, that's okay, because if you say anything about Obama, you're a racist. If you don't like Hillary Clinton, you're a sexist, says Bernie Sanders. The mindset is so unbelievably twisted. they have to use these divisional tactics, because if not, people would not be so brain dead. They'd be able to see what was really going on if we actually had a real discussion about issues that actually mattered, instead of tic-tac topics that mean nothing to the betterment of all mankind. And even if you said, well, if we have a discussion about abortion, we're having an argument about whether or not this baby, this fetus, is conscious. If this baby is alive, do they have rights? Well, the same people that are pro-life and don't kill a baby in the womb are the same people that once the baby's born, as soon as it can walk, they put it in camouflage, they give it an M16, and they send it overseas. It's backwards thinking. It's cognitive dissonance. Pro-life, pro-war. Doesn't really make any sense to me unless you see the absolute hypocrisy and the dichotomy of how these people's minds are severed, how they're split, and how perhaps they're possessed by their own idiotic logic to be, I guess, blunt in that way. They are possessed, whether that's by another entity or they're possessed and their ego has eaten themselves. They are possessed in some way, shape, or form. It's incredible to me how the Clintons and the Bushes, two criminal families involved in everything from drug running to political assassinations to gun running, mafia-style tactics. The Clintons now, Hillary Clinton turns over her private server to the FBI after a year. It's completely wiped professionally, and nothing happens to her. That's an obstruction of justice, first of all. That woman should be doing prison time. She should have been doing time years ago. Clinton should be doing time. The Bushes, the father, the son, they all should be doing hard time. If you did half of what these people do, if you were accused of doing half of what these people have done, even in the public light, you'd probably be on death row. These people, not only are they not sent to prison, not only do they not even have a trial, these people are the people that you are given as your leaders, or the leaders in the presidential election, the people that could possibly be your leaders, as saviors to problems that they promulgate and entice into happening. You talk about a war on drugs and gun violence, and then you're all screaming for Obama as a black president when him and Eric Holder, two black men, were completely behind Operation Fast and Furious, or Operation Wide Receiver was, I think, the official name for it, putting guns into the hands of Mexican drug cartels. That's okay, though, because if you don't like that, you're a racist. If you don't like Hillary Clinton and you think that it's a felony for her to obstruct justice through the State Department, and you think it's a felony for her to erase her emails from the server and then hand it over to the FBI, you're a sexist. That's how it works. And that's all the manipulation of language. That's the manipulation of language, the elimination of language, the New Hampshire University bias-free language guide. Don't say American, it's offensive. Say people of European descent. Don't say mother. Don't say father. It causes confusion. It is systematic cultural genocide. And it's being done targeting minority groups, ethnic groups. And at the same time they target these groups, it's now being orchestrated so that literally white men are now becoming the enemy, as if all white men or all white people should have this white guilt, and as if white people have hatred for everybody. I don't have hatred for any other group. Most of you out there don't. I mean, I don't know how many listeners we have that are of so many different ethnic backgrounds, but I'm sure if you're listening to the program, you'd agree with me. I mean, I don't even see skin color. What is it? It doesn't matter. And the simple fact that your world leaders, who we see them as so intelligent and smart, the simple fact that they play on that should be the simplest proof that there is an international global conspiracy to divide the population and to call a large portion of the population, especially the ethnic minority groups. We'll actually be talking here in, it'll either be next week or the week after, we'll have Freeway Ricky Ross, hopefully coming back on the program for about an hour to talk about his involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency and the drug dealing, as well as a big topic I wanted to get into, the infiltration of the hip-hop industry by the Central Intelligence Agency, taking an art form that was about culture and about about a particular group of people and turning it into violence and drug abuse and sexual exploitation. It's another type of PSYOP warfare. And we'll talk to Ricky Ross about that, the real Rick Ross, not the fake rapper Rick Ross, who gets paid to promote the image when the guy is basically a college kid who worked as a security guard at a prison. Unbelievable the way that the system works. Anyway, though, I have some news I wanted to get to here, so excuse my ramblings as I just sort of ramble on for the last half hour here. But I have a couple of things I wanted to get to. The first one is AT&T helped the United States National Security Agency in spying on internet traffic. According to the New York Times and Reuters, this article is up at thesecretteachings.info. It says telecommunications powerhouse AT&T Incorporated has provided extensive assistance to the U.S. National Security Agency as the spy agency conducts surveillance on huge volumes of internet traffic passing through the United States, the New York Times reported on Saturday, citing new disclosed NSA documents. The New York Times newspaper reported that the company gave technical assistance to the NSA in carrying out a secret court order allowing wiretapping of all internet communications at the headquarters of the United Nations and AT&T customers. So, AT&T helped the NSA spy on even the United Nations. And, of course, we spy on everybody, and everybody spies on us, as if that's a big revelation. But what this should be is more of a wake-up call to everybody out there. I mean, obviously, when the revelations of Edward Snowden came out, it had people up in arms to some extent, and then it was, it's all justified because of 9/11. It's all justified because of the biggest deception, or you could say one of the biggest deceptions in American history. I mean, there's other big deceptions such as the financial economy, the Federal Reserve. The history of banking is one of the most monumental scams ever perpetuated on human beings ever. The trafficking of children and pedophilia that is rampant within government and corporations is another one of the biggest conspiracies and the biggest issues I think that we've ever faced as a species, because who knows if these people are even human, as we talked about with Jim Mars. They could be something else, and whether they are or not, they see themselves as being much superior to us, and they see us as inferior, which is why there has been a divide between the ruled and between the ruled and between the rulers, and there is such a divide now that there is beginning to be a type of breakaway civilization, if you will, where the elitists and these technocrats, they not only think, they know. And that knowing crafts their reality. They know they're better than you. They know they're better than me. And so because of that, they have absolutely no problem. They see it as justified through their ego and their just psychopathic tendencies to poison you, literally, through water, through food, through vaccinations, through medication, through geoengineering of the environment. And just like the AT&T and National Security Agency working together, all of those who are supporting AT&T to have phone service will sit back and say, well, they were trying to catch terrorists. And there's no outrage about it. I could show you the proof. I've shown you the proof. It's in my books. Jim Mars talked about it. It's in his books. Several other radio shows, whether it's fluoride, hydrofluorosilicic acid, lithium, arsenic, ammonia, put into the water supply. Whether it's drugs that have been laced with AIDS, knowingly, by companies like Bayer, and then sold. That's okay. Vaccinations that were, whether intentionally or unintentionally, tainted with the swine flu, which in my opinion is a genetically engineered version of a much older flu, perhaps from the early 1900s. A lot of the microbiologists that worked on that died. in the past couple of years, past decade or two. The medication that companies know is poisonous. They know it causes more problems than it cures, and yet it's sold to you, and their regulatory bodies are paid off to say it's good. It's a calling of the population. And when we see revelations such as AT&T worked extensively, not as if they're working with the NSA like Apple, which is, I don't know if that's a good example, but Apple basically claimed that they did nothing to deceive their clients when the Snowden revelations came out. All they did was just transfer the data to a different server and give the NSA access to it. So when they said they didn't give access to their servers, well, it was technically true. They just copied and pasted the information to an additional server somewhere else. They gave the NSA the information anyway. But Apple and Steve Jobs actually had a patent through the U.S. government for iPhones in particular, where if you went into an area of the United States or a building that was considered restricted, the camera on your phone could be turned off. Just like that. Gives them access to the phone. And I mean, this is, I'm sure, part of the terms and services you agree to when you first get the phone, but nobody reads it. And you see how mentally numb people are. If you go and buy a phone, or if you go to a bank, anywhere where you have to sign a piece of paper that has more than a couple of sentences on it, and you want to read the terms, it's like the people behind the counter, they have no clue what you're doing. Just sign it. Okay, well, let me read it first. Well, it's just terms and services. Just sign it. No, I'm not going to just sign it because I might be signing over my car to you. I might be signing over my house to you. I might be signing over my kids to you. I don't know what's in this contract. I'm going to read it before I sign it. I'm going to be an informed consumer, not an ignorant sheeple. Just because there's somebody else in line, hurry up, sign it real quick. I mean, it's unbelievable. The idiocracy that has been bred into us. The eradication of logic and critical thinking, the eradication of any form of liberty or privacy. And how do the people feel about it? They cheer. Because as long as they have Caitlyn Jenner, and as long as they have Cecil the Lion, and as long as they have the X Factor, everybody is just okay. They have no reason to get upset about AT&T as a company deceiving them as customers, although they consented to it anyway with the purchasing of the technology. And nobody backs out. Nobody says, well, I'm not doing AT&T anymore. I'm going with another company. Not that any other company such as Verizon or Sprint is any better, but AT&T is notorious for just handing over the information. I mean, at least with a company like Yahoo, the CEO of Yahoo at least publicly claimed to fight the NSA and said, no, we're not going to just hand you the information. And the NSA said, well, if you don't, we'll just throw you in jail. At least they tried publicly. AT&T just said, we don't care. Here it is. At least have some dignity, respect for your privacy, for yourself. You're not inferior to these people. And they are not superior to you. We are not cattle to be herded into the slaughterhouse just because it's easier to watch television. How do you think we got here today as a species? Is it because everybody just sat around watching the grass grow? It's because of inventors, philosophers, people who sat and thought, had original ideas, overthrew tyrannical governments, protected the innocent, protected privacy, respected everybody's opinion, respected everybody's voice. You don't have to agree with it, but respect it. And today, if someone on the side of the street is being robbed or mugged, what do? We take out our phone and we film it and we put it on YouTube to get so many hits we can get. Our culture and our society has deteriorated substantially alongside of our infrastructure. The United States Republic no longer exists. This country at this point is an oligarchy controlled by a few dynastical families, run by private corporations. That is the cold, hard truth. Anybody sticking around for any presidential debate, thinking that whether it's Donald Trump or Rand Paul, things will change, it won't. It's never going to change. This country has become the very symbol of what it claims to fight. Terrorism, terrorism, terrorism. We claim to fight terrorists, and yet we are run by terrorists. It's the old idea of blaming your enemy for what you are yourself guilty of to divert attention. And the thing is, most of these elitists think that their actions are justified. But as I posed as a question earlier, if people like George Bush the father doesn't even know what that beeping noise is in the supermarket when an item is scanned, and Hillary Clinton doesn't even know when cabinet meetings are, doesn't even know what a fax machine is, and says, hey, can you come in here and pour me a glass of tea? I don't know how to do that. And then negligently, through criminal activity, erases her hard drive under an FBI probe and then hands it over, and nothing happens to her. Who's really expendable here? All the people that voted for George Bush the father, thinking that he could relate to us. He'd be a great president. Really, these people can relate to you when you barely can even go to the grocery store because you don't have enough money. This guy goes and doesn't even know what the little red laser light is and the beeping sound. Who is really expendable if we want to get into eugenics? If you want to get into a real history or a real overview of what eugenics is or should be, I think it would scare these people to hell. Because they're the ones that are really expendable. Not average, everyday people who actually have a mind of their own. They just don't have the courage to stand up and express an original thought. Because they are kept in fear by dynastical criminal oligarchies telling them that they are inferior, telling them that there are superiors above them that dictate what they should or shouldn't do, what they can and can't say, what's politically correct or not, to dehumanize them into thinking that breathing is destroying the environment and that the sun that gives us life is some type of horrifying planetary object, to stay away from it, block it out. It's dehumanization. It's time to take the reins back. Stop allowing them to dehumanize you, to turn you into drones, to turn you into another cog, to turn you into what they really are. Useless bottom feeders. Don't be a useless bottom feeder. Stand up and express an original thought, and who gives a damn what anybody else thinks or says about you, or what your opinions or beliefs are. But at the same time, respect everybody else's opinions and beliefs. That's how we can have a consensus culture in society. And the way that we start taking the reins back is by educating people, and stop mocking and laughing at those who say things that conflict with your little Hannah Montana dream world. That everything is just peaches and cream and nothing matters but entertainment, bread and circuses. A couple of years ago, when Michael Hastings was murdered and his car was remote controlled into a tree, as I believe, and the engine somehow detached and flew 100 yards away, which is a whole story and a whole show in and of itself on the history of political assassinations, and I detailed that in my first book, The Grand Illusion. I said as soon as Michael Hastings died, that car was hacked into and it was remote controlled into that tree where it exploded. It might have even had explosives on board, but either way, the car was hijacked. I also said that Lady Diana's car in 1997 was hijacked. People tell me I'm crazy that can't happen. Well, it can happen, and more recently we've seen Jeeps hijacked through an IP address. And I have an article here, Can Your Car Really Be Hacked, from Yahoo Tech, talking about a Corvette that had its brakes cut and the control of the windshield wipers were turned over to hackers who basically used a smartphone. That's just one of the many issues we face with smart technology in our cars, smart vehicles, smartphones, smart televisions. Yes, Big Brother is watching, but so is that pervert down the street. And so is that criminal next door who can easily access your internet password and hack into your computer through your CFL bulb, or just because you wanted to make things easier for yourself. So you got all of this smart technology. Somebody can control your thermostat, control your smart meter, raise prices on energy. It's all part of a grander agenda, as we've been exposing in this incredible 5-week series on sustainable development. And I advise all of you to go to thesecretteachings.info, go to the Secret Teachings archive at the top of the page, and download all 5 episodes, including this episode, which featured for, I think we had him for about an hour and 40 minutes, the one and only Jim Marrs, award-winning journalist and author of Population Control, his new book. He's also written some other ones such as Alien Agenda, Rise of the Fourth Reich, and Rule by Secrecy, all essentials to understanding the problems we face and how to get out of them by informing ourselves and educating ourselves and others. That's the first step, as we talked about with Mr. Marrs. Last week we actually had Karen Dahlman on the program. We talked about alchemy. Last week's show was 4 hours long, not 3 hours, 4 hours long. So a little extra dose of the Secret Teachings. And as I said, I would just highly advise you to listen to all 5 of these episodes on sustainable development, and then obviously prepare. We've got some other guests coming up. Brad Olson returns to the Secret Teachings. The Real Freeway Ricky Ross will hopefully be joining us either next week or the week after. I haven't decided when we'll do that interview yet, but he will be coming up. On the website, there's a couple of other news articles linked up, including that car hijack article at the secretteachings.info. The one here is plague-infected squirrels found at Yosemite National Park Campground. That one is from the LA Times. I don't have time to get into that, but that's from the LA Times, linked up on our website. And then I wanted to read you this. This comes from Yahoo Beauty, and it's a story. It says, Plain Hannah, Montana gave Miley Cyrus anxiety and body dysmorphia. I thought this was really interesting because of a couple of reasons. First of all, we know the industry through Disney and Nickelodeon, but specifically Disney, is absolutely corrupt with pedophiles and networks that feed into it of child trafficking, but mainly of mind control. And so many of these programs are mind control, whether intentionally or not, for young children. Miley Cyrus says that from the time I was 11, it was, you are a pop star. That means you have to be blonde, and you have to have long hair, and you have to put on some glittery, tight thing. And she says, meanwhile, I'm this fragile little girl playing a 16-year-old in a wig and a ton of makeup. I was told for so long what a girl is supposed to be from being on that show. I would have anxiety attacks. I'd get hot flashes, feel like I was about to pass out or throw up. It would happen a lot before shows, and I'd have to cancel. Then the anxiety started coming from anxiety. She says, you get into this hole that seems like you're never going to be able to get out of it. Being told what a girl should be, even what a guy should be, that's part of the social engineering. She also says when you look at retouched, perfect photos, you feel like shit. They lighten black girls' skin. That's right, they do that. They smooth out wrinkles. Even I get stuck on Instagram wondering, why don't I look like that? It's a total bummer. It's crazy what people have decided we're all supposed to be. I absolutely agree with this girl. And whether she was in some type of DARPA mind control program working through Disney or some type of Project Monarch, she has her mental breakdown and, just dresses in these sexually explicit clothes, dancing on stage. This is an industry, a foundry, pumping out these child stars that eventually break away from the programming through, sex, drugs, and, just they have a mental breakdown. You see this with a lot of child stars. Now, the reason I thought that was interesting, and there's a lot more we could talk about with Miley Cyrus, even people like Amanda Bynes, with the dyeing her hair blue, which is similar to Britney Spears having a breakdown, shaving her head, dyeing the hair blue, shaving the head, changing your image. These are all, obviously ways you can try to change your image away from what you were portrayed as in Miley Cyrus's case. But for Miley Cyrus, Amanda Bynes, and Britney Spears, three great cases of mind control, I would say. In Britney Spears' case, she's basically saying that she's being told what to say, being told what to do. Miley Cyrus's dad even said that Miley Cyrus had handlers. And obviously, people in the entertainment industry that work very closely with these actors and actresses, of course, have all of this access, but it's a different type of handler. It's mind control, and it's being pushed on your kids through these innocent-looking television shows. So that is an interesting article, fascinating article. I hope to get Mike D's take on that if he can join us next week for a little bit. And we'll also be talking, I had a listener email me about dog and cat food or animal food and how it's laced with poisons. Hopefully we'll be able to get to that next week. Mike D has more information on that than I do because I don't have any animals, but he's got a dog, and I don't know if he has any other animals, but he'll be able to give us some info on that. Last article I have, it's up at thesecretteachings.info. This is actually from the Vigilant Citizen. It's a 1-minute video that they have posted from the X Factor in the UK. It's a commercial for the X Factor. And I've never watched the X Factor. I don't really know anything about it, although it's some type of talent show, I guess, like an American type Idol. Simon Cowell's actually in this 1-minute video here. And in the video, this guy named Nick Grimshaw, that might mean something to you out there, I guess he's one of the judges, is implanted on the back of the neck with a microchip in the video, where he starts basically saying, you're a pop star. You sound like a pop star. And then he turns and says, oh, this is last year's chip. This is last year's chip. They're being programmed what to say and how to say it. And in the video also, I have no clue how to pronounce this woman's name, Cheryl Versini. I have no clue who these people are. You out there might. They show a room with her with dozens and dozens and dozens of her, all duplicates, all with the same face, clones, and it starts out with a glimmer of a robotic digital eye for her right eye, which is the famous illumination hand gesture where her one eye is visible and the other is not. Another form of multiple personalities, which are engineered into some of these children. It's a form of mind control. And you see the duplication and the clones there of Cheryl in the video. And then there's also a moment in the video, it's just a 1-minute video, where Simon Cowell is sitting there and he's having his thoughts analyzed. A little bit like pre-crime. So that video is in the Vigilant Citizen article. It's linked up at thesecretteachings.info. That's www.thesecretteachings.info. We are just about out of time for today. Coming up on the program, of course, we have Brad Olson. We will be taking more comments or topic ideas from listeners, so you can email me at rdgable@yahoo.com with your ideas, topics for the show. That's rdgable@yahoo.com. We'll also have Freeway Ricky Ross, the real Rick Ross, not the fake rapper. This is the real Rick Ross coming up to talk about the CIA infiltration of the hip-hop industry as well as their involvement in drug dealing and drug running. We'll talk to him very soon. Other than that, on the website, all of our past episodes, including today's program with award-winning journalist and author, the one and only Jim Marrs, author of Population Control. His book is available on Amazon, anywhere books are sold, including his website, jimmarrs.com. I am Ryan Gable. Our website is www.thesecretteachings.info. Go to the website. Please help support the show by donating. Any donations over $20, I will send you one of my books that you choose. You can email me once you send the donation. I'll send you either one of my books, as part of that donation. Any donation over $50, I'll send you both of my books. If you'd like to purchase the books in soft cover, the Amazon website now has both of those books up, and you can find a link to that at thesecretteachings.info. That's thesecretteachings.info. I am Ryan Gable. That's our website. And as always, do the research and do the math. Stop letting people tell you what to think, including myself, and begin to connect the dots between seemingly unconnected people, places, and events in the world that seems so complex will actually begin to make sense. Auf Wiedersehen. Un namaste.
have certain rules I live by. My first rule, I don't believe anything the government tells me.
The leader in talk radio on the internet, right here on K98Talk.com.
When our water heater broke down last month, it was a nightmare. It took 5 hours for the plumber to show up, and he charged us a couple of $100 just to come out. And then it cost another $1,800 to put in the new water heater. By the time it was all said and done, I felt like I'd been taken. But what else could I do?
The smartest thing you can do is get a home warranty from American Residential Warranty. Their home warranties pay to repair or replace all your major appliances when they break, and they will break, and at the worst possible time. Call American Residential Warranty right now for free information on home warranties starting at just pennies a day. Don't wait for your refrigerator to stop running or your ceiling fans to stop turning. Call American Residential Warranty right now. Ask how you can save up to 50% on washer and dryer coverage. Just call 1-800-513-6154. That's 1-800-513-6154. Again, 1-800-513-6154. Call now.
Tired of paying outrageous prices for Viagra? Well, we have great news for you. Now you can finally get Viagra at huge discounts. Healthy Man allows you to save up to $500 on Viagra. Why pay U.S. pharmacy prices of $15 per pill or more when you can get Viagra for less than $3 a pill? Call today and get 40 Viagra pills for only $99. This can cost as much as $600 at your local pharmacy. You can't afford not to call us. If you want Viagra at the lowest prices, never pay $15 a pill pharmacy prices again. Get Viagra for less than $3 a pill. Call 1-800-516-7602 today and save up to $500 and get 40 pills for just $99. Healthy Man is fast, easy, and affordable. Operators are waiting at 1-800-516-7602 to take your call right now. Call 1-800-516-7602. That's 1-800-516-7602. Again, 1-800-516-7602.